Welcome to the Great Lakes State and the place where it all began, the birthplace of grid life as we know it. A flat 2.25 mile circuit called Gingerman Raceway is home, and it's played host to some of grid life's most significant moments, especially since the introduction of Touring Cup 5 years ago. This weekend brings round 4 for the championship after things kicked off at Circuit of the Americas, Carolina Motorsports Park, and Willow Springs in March and April. It's June, and it's time for the 11th annual Grid Life Midwest Festival. Hi, everybody. Kyle Heyer, joined by Greg Kramer up here in the booth. Greg, so excited to be back for a 5th year for GLTC and year 11 for Grid Life Midwest.
Yeah, it's my second time here, and absolutely love this place. Love this event. It is truly a festival. You can see there's hardly any spare space in the paddock at all. The campground already filling up, and what a great place to be able to have a championship race as well, amidst all the drifting and all of that other stuff. This track has a lot of challenge to it. It is a technical little place, and looking forward to some fabulous racing all weekend long.
Yeah, this is going to be a fantastic place to race. It's our home for Grid Life, as it's been for the last handful of years. 2.26 mile racetrack, 11 corners, but we have a special guest up here as well with us in the booth. We've got Jessica Hawkins joining us now, driver in the British GT Series, a stunt driver. She's driven the W Series, and last September drove the AMR 21 Aston Martin F1 car at Hungaroring. Jessica, welcome to Grid Life. This has got to be something completely different from what you're used to. What's your impressions so far?
So different. This brings me, firstly, hello. Thank you very much for having me. But yeah, this really brings me back to the early days when I first started karting with my dad, you know, very family orientated. And no, I'm here with Valvoline. It's my first Grid Life event, so I'm still learning myself, to be honest. But yeah, amazing so far. And I had my first little run out in car this morning. In fact, I just got in. But yeah, amazing. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, very excited to have you here, and we're going to show you some Grid Life Touring Cup racing in just a couple minutes' time. And Greg, this is going to be something really fun to show Jessica, our GLTC Series, 60 cars on track for this race in a 15-minute sprint format.
Yeah, and they just absolutely fly, obviously, on this short track. All those cars, traffic, as you would expect, is always going to be an issue here. But because of the rule structure of GLTC, with the overlap rule, the respect that's part of the ethos of this championship, you get clean racing even with that number of cars and lots of side-by-side racing. That is spectacular. And here's a look at somebody out on the track having a bit of fun.
Look at me go. Look at me go.
So you got some laps in Dustin Williams' time attack car earlier. What was it like, first laps on Gingerman Raceway?
Yeah, great. There was I didn't exactly know where I was going when I was out there, so it maybe took a lap to adjust and really remember where I was going. But no, really, really fantastic. My front brakes were nearly on fire when I came in, so I didn't go easy on it.
As far as tracks that you've driven on that you can compare this to, this is probably different from a lot of tracks you've been to, but is there one that maybe it kind of feels familiar like?
Ooh, it's quite narrow. I don't know.
It's not quite an Olden Parker Brands Hatch, is it? But
it's
got some similar probably corners, some of the longer corners, more technical corners as well.
The surface seems quite coarse, and just the color of it is quite a lot different to what I'm used to. I guess that's what's used. But no, it's fantastic, and learning new circuits I always love. You know, as a racing driver, you love going to new circuits because it's new challenges, you know. So, no, it was great to get a few laps under my belt.
Yeah, certainly. And, of course, this is our home track. We've been running Grid Lifes here pretty much longer than anywhere else we've been running Grid Lifes. And there's a look at the paddock. It is absolutely packed here this weekend. Of course, Grid Life Live is brought to you by Falcon Tires, the official tire of Grid Life Track Battle, and NOS Energy, the official energy drink sponsor of Grid Life and the title partner of the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship. Of course, Dustin Williams is participating in that this weekend, whose car you were driving earlier. But it's really neat to see all this packed in here together. And, of course, this is Grid Life Touring Cup here, Greg, and, man, what a crazy weekend this is going to be with our single-class format here. No contact allowed this weekend.
Yeah, and it's all I mean, you're going to see Corvettes going up against Civics, and it works. That's the wonderful thing about it here. You can see right now we've had some practices, we've had qualifying, and now we are getting ready to go, and the best lap in qualifying sets the grid for this race. Grid for Race 2 set by best lap here. So if you struggled in qualifying, you get almost a mulligan in a sense. If you're out there and you're down in the order and you're struggling a little bit in terms of a finishing position, create a gap, put in one more flying qualifier lap, and you can get yourself a nice starting position for that second race. They are separate races, but they're tied together the way that this is structured.
Over the course of a weekend, we've got this structure where one race flows into the next, but qualifying, I think, is probably one of the most important races, or really races of the weekend, right? Yeah. You're setting yourself up for race one. We have a 60-car grid here, Jessica. In your racing experience, how important is qualifying to get that track position so you don't have to fight through the pack? You can just keep them behind you.
Well, I guess qualifying is always important. I think especially when there's 60 cars on track. I don't think I've ever raced against 60 in one go, but qualifying is important when there's 10 people on circuit or 100 people on circuit. It's it can make or break your weekend, especially with short races as well. There's only 15 minutes to make up for lost time. So yeah, the guys at the back, guys and girls at the back, will be under pressure if they've had a bad qualifying, and I guess they've got a lot to do in 15 minutes.
Well, and that's a fact, and trying to work your way through. One thing about this track, I mean, it's a great track to drive. It's a tough place to pass on. Really, turn 11 is your best option there. You can finagle some things. If you can get somebody to make a mistake in 6, you can surprise them into 7. So if you're back in the order here, it's tough to make your way forward, and that's why if you're struggling, get a good lap in this race to set you up for that next race. I do want to say that I had the pleasure a couple of years ago of announcing at the Formula One race in Miami, and you were there for the W Series and put it on the podium, and you just told me that was your first podium in that championship.
Yeah, that was my first W Series podium. So good to see you again.
Yeah,
I can tell you that feeling was, if I could bottle that feeling up and sell it, I'd be a very, very wealthy woman. Such a great experience, and America seems to have been good to me. So long may it go on. And everyone just seems happy here. Everyone's happy. That's the difference. Probably because the weather's much nicer. But
well, in June maybe here, but maybe not in December. But I want to talk a little bit about your current drive in British GT. You're running an Aston Martin GT3 car.
Yep.
In GT3 racing, you've got balance of performance where all the cars are in a similar performance window. They don't all drive the same, but here in GLTC, we've got wildly different cars. Front-wheel drive cars, all-wheel drive cars, rear-wheel drive cars. Engine swaps are allowed, big aero, little aero. It's all balanced with weight and tire width. So how challenging is that going to be for drivers to kind of manage their vehicle against a field of cars that are completely different?
So I can tell you from a driver's perspective, it's really difficult if you're in a slightly underpowered car but you're fast around corners, it's really annoying / difficult when you come up against a car that's fast in a straight line but not quite as fast around corners. It averages out over the lap, and one is probably better in qualifying than what the other one is racing, and vice versa. But yeah, it's all a tactics game, and again, this is why qualifying is so key. If those higher powered cars are able to qualify higher, that makes them really difficult to pass because they've just got that straight line speed. So that's why I guess qualifying is so key. But we'll see what they go on. There's some very good drivers in this race, and I'm sure they've done this before, so they know what they're doing. We'll see how they go on.
Well, and whenever you get into traffic, horsepower is your friend.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So you've got a nice momentum car. If you're in clear track, you can use that to great effect. But the minute you get, as you said, caught up, and then you add in a track that isn't particularly easy to pass on. And this is a technical place, too. There are spots that require a lot of patience and, spots that require a lot of commitment. We talked about before about, the turns that just keep unwinding and you feel like you're going to go off the track, but you just got to stay in it because the track's going to open up again. Just little things like that that make this place a challenge.
In a few moments' time, we'll get cars on track for 2 pace laps before we turn them loose. A couple rules about the starting procedures here in GRIDLIFE Touring Cup. We go on green flag flies, you can pass, you can make moves, you can go 3, you can go 4 wide if you'd like to, even though this track probably isn't wide enough to do that. The other thing is the leader gets to choose which lane they would start, and that's interesting because I would say turn 2 here at Gingerman Raceway is kind of the corner that you're setting up for. It's a long 180-degree turn. Turn 1's a quick left, Greg. So sometimes we see drivers opt for driver's right, even though it's not really on the racing line for that first corner.
Well, I was talking to Matan Rosenberg, who qualified second, and he said, I'm putting the energy out there to make sure Luke takes the inside, the pole sitter, because he felt that. He said, if you can get a nice roll speed around the outside of 1, you're in position for 2.
Maybe this is a little bit controversial, but I think I would, this is just without too much thought going into it, I think I would go for the inside spot and then defend the second corner as much as I can, because if someone gets on the inside of you at T1, it's then if they then defend T2, it's then very difficult to get them back. So I would edge on first thought to go for the inside line for T1, so left-hand side, and then cover yourself as much as you can in T2.
We'll see what the leader chooses here in just a moment's time. Here's a look at our point standings, though, for 2024 so far. This is after round 3. Luke McGrew in a Corvette leads with 176 race points. We're taking your best 16 races plus the races at Pit Race. Your event winners, Luke McGrew, Larry Moore, and Eric Cattell so far this season here. But James Houghton is here, Matan Rosenberg is here, Eric Magnuson is here, Greg. So there's a lot of heavy hitters that are in this race, in this championship, that are looking to maximize points this weekend.
Yeah, and I talked to Eric Magnuson, who came out swinging at the first races, and he said the problem that he had in qualifying was he went out, he doesn't know this track, he's never been here, he practiced yesterday. He said, I could not get any temperature in my tires at all, and he said right when I came in, we did a tire pressure adjustment, went out, and that yellow flag hit, and he said, so where I was stopped. And so that's part of the nuance here is obviously you're dealing with a lot here in these sessions. So, they've got work to do. And more than a few people that I talked to in the paddock were talking about they either overpressured the tires or they were so underpressured that they weren't getting any temp at all. And we see our jack of all trades, or Adam of all trades out there. That's one of the things you got to love about GridLife, Kyle. You're so involved. This is one of the co-owners, and he's out there cleaning the track, picking up body work. I saw the other co-owner lugging cable earlier. It's an all-in effort by this group.
Boots on the ground. And I want to talk about track conditions a little bit, Jessica, because this race weekend we've got wheel racing, we've got time attack, we've got drift, we've got grip lift, which is our drift and grip sessions that are all combined into one. The track gets dirty, it gets filthy, there's rubber and marbles and all these things. How challenging is it to push at a racetrack when the surface conditions are changing constantly from session to session?
I guess it's a progression over the weekend. Normally when you turn up to circuit, there's not much grip at all. And throughout the weekend, people put new tyres down. The more tyres get used, the heat ramps up during the day. So it shouldn't be a huge step session by session. It should be little increments. So it shouldn't catch them out too much. But of course, over the weekend, the track does grip up and it does provide that extra grip and traction that helps the car more than anything.
Yeah, and certainly at Midwest Festival over the course of the weekend, the drift cars, they can kind of change where the rubber ends up on and off the racing line, especially as well. So looks like cars are rolling, and Sophie out there going to split our fields. This is we're going to learn which lane our leader chooses, and we'll see. There's our pace truck this time around. We'll talk about that a little bit later here this weekend. And Luke McGrew chooses driver's left.
Oh,
you were right,
went
Jessica.
inside. Yeah,
that's
well read.
I think that's wise, as long as you can hold them off the first corner, just because I think it's difficult, because of the angle of the corner, it would be really difficult to pass on the outside of T1, to be able to hang it on. Plus, we're on Friday, they had testing yesterday, so by this point of the weekend, you've already got a line, and there'll be some marbles on the outside, so I think that's a wise choice. Not bulletproof, because it is possible, but I think it's wise.
Well, there's a rule here in GRIDLIFE Touring Cup, and it isn't a hard and fast rule, but it's the ethos is the overlap. And if the car, if you're around the outside and you just have the slightest bit of overlap, the other car has to give you that piece of track. So it's going to be really interesting. So you can't just shut the door on them. So I think it's almost 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's as you said, if there's a lot of clag on the outside of the track, it's going to be tough. Yeah.
We'll see. I'm sure both drivers have got a plan for whatever happens. But sometimes in these situations, it's so difficult to plan for because there are so many different possibilities and scenarios that you could be in. If the driver on the right is a full car length ahead, you don't want to stick on the inside because chances are you'll crash. And you can't account for every possible thing that's going to happen, but I'm sure there are more likely things that you can plan for.
if it wasn't overwhelming of a weekend enough, there are a handful of drivers in this field who are making their first ever wheel-to-wheel racing start, and some that are making their first ever GRIDLIFE Touring Cup start, though they've been Track Battle Time Attack competitors before. One of them is Dana Basinski, our 2023 Falcon Club TR champion. He's in this field. Tony Barber, who runs in street class, usually in a Tesla Model 3, has jumped in a Porsche Boxster for this event. There's a handful of others that fit that category as well. So this series has got a whole lot of variety of cars and drivers. This is going to be fun.
And ages, because one of them out there is 14 years old, and his first name is Ayrton Grimm, making his first ever start here as well. Qualified, I mean, it's a big field, and he qualified in the top 2/3 in his first ever appearance. And this is intimidating. You know, this isn't a super long track at 2.2 miles, and 55 cars or whatever are going to start. That's a lot of cars per mile.
One of the things Adam Jabay always talks about when we go green here, if you've never started in a field this big, so there's some cars, MX-5s, there's some cars that are Corvettes. A lot of times people will be banging the rev limiter down the front straightaway because they can't even hear their own car, and they don't even realize that they're on the limiter. So it's things like that you're not going to get used to without actually getting into the field and driving. So Ayrton Grimm, 14 years old, CRP Racing, Mazda MX-5, starting, I think, in 43rd, Greg. That car is not quite fully prepped for GRIDLIFE Touring Cup, but I think my understanding is that they're giving GLTC a try to see if they should build a car for the series, and we hope that they do. But cars are side by side, two Corvettes up front. Luke McGrew on the right-hand side of the screen, Matan Rosenberg on the other. Matan Rosenberg's only 19 years old, by the way, and he began racing in an MX-5 and is now swapped over to this Corvette chassis and running a livery from Corvette Racing's ALMS program from 2009.
A lot of history in that livery there. You think about the drivers that have been part of Corvette racing over the years. I think two of the other big stories here, Eric Meadows qualifying third, and talking with Eric and with our pole sitter Luke McGrew, the cars are virtually identical. The only difference is the gearbox in the cars. Otherwise, they are virtually identical. And Luke said, watch for Eric. He said he's really got that car figured out now. And for Matan Rosenberg, big changes. He found a diff where he could actually have a different gear ratio that would work, and now he's got it's a 411 ratio, and he's also going with 305 tires all around. He'd been running the big fatter tire in the back, narrower front, and he said the gearing is perfect for this track right now. The tire selection is absolutely right. And then starting at 7th spot, we got a guy who's best ever qualifying effort for GRIDLIFE in Touring Cup.
Yeah, that's Jake Jornstad from the Myriad Motorsports camp. He's extremely excited to be up inside the top 10. I think he's going to be a fun one to watch in a teal Honda S2000. And Jessica, I want to talk a little bit about shifting here a bit, because in this series, you can have a variety of different transmissions, and if you get something fancier, you add more weight, right? So you can have a 5 or 6 speed stick shift, and you get no points for that, no extra weight. Dog box transmissions, you get about 2% extra weight, and you can have a sequential or a DCT for another 5% weight. Talk to me a little bit about the heel to toe downshifting and how maybe going to a fancier gearbox might assist you in finding some lap time.
God, it depends in these cars. I guess it varies for each different car whether it's worth it or not. Is it an already naturally heavy car? Is it a light car? Each will have benefits and probably some cons as well. So I think it's probably very car specific for a championship like this. If all cars were the same, there would certainly be one clear winner. So for that's a very difficult question. I feel very under pressure for that one.
Sorry. Well, I bring it up because of Greg's gear ratio comment, because the Corvettes in particular and Eric Jensen's LS Swap Scion FRS, they only have to shift once or twice a lap. It's usually mostly third gear, maybe a shift to fourth, where some of the lighter, lower powered cars are using second, third, fourth, and fifth. So the number of shifts is 5 or 6 times as much over the course of the lap.
And I guess that depends how much power the engine has as well. So there are so many different variabilities until you know exactly which car it is, and perhaps try or look at previous results, see what the other drivers have, I guess. Or sticking, with BOP, this is the beauty of BOP though, because if one is faster and you have something else, you're lighter because of it. So this is the beauty of BOP. You don't have to get the fanciest, the best, the this, the that, because you can make up for it in other areas.
When you see the Corvettes are all running, they don't run a big wing on the back. It's just a little spoiler because that allows them to run with less weight.
Yeah.
So they're all playing that game because they start heavy. And speaking of starts,
it's coming up. The lowest powered car, about 165 horsepower. The highest powered car, about 270. Lightest car, about 2,300 pounds. Heaviest, 3,600 pounds. That's what we're talking about at GRIDLIFE Midwest Festival, the 11th annual GRIDLIFE Midwest. It's round 4 of GRIDLIFE Touring Cup.
Wise.
And we're underway. GRIDLIFE Touring Cup is green at Gingerman Raceway. Down towards turn 1, Matan Rosenberg and Luke McGrew side by side, Greg. And so far, so good.
ooh, and you saw Matan, what you were talking about, got a little sideways there, but he was able to get enough ahead. Look at Cattell dive down the inside here, but this is where Luke ought to be able to out-accelerate him up the hill. Will Luke be able to get to the inside of 3 here? Doesn't look like it.
And Eric Cattell sneaking up the inside in that very lightweight Honda Civic, 2,500 pounds. It's about 500 pounds lighter than the Corvette right ahead of him, Jessica. So there's 2 cars, the 7 and the 82, completely different. Front drive, lightweight, low power. Rear drive, lots of weight, big horsepower.
Yeah, it was just interesting actually because the guy starting in P2, he was far enough around the outside to be able to stick it out, and you know the pole man just didn't squeeze him enough, I guess. I feel like he could have squeezed him, but maybe this racing is a lot kinder than what mine is.
Yes,
maybe.
by design.
Well, and you mentioned it because when I was talking to Matan, who was the outside starter, he said that Luke on pole, he said he tends to be a little bit conservative on the first lap.
Yeah.
So it played well into his hands. We should also mention the car running in 5th right now. That's Matt Walbaum driving Waldgard, as we're calling it. And you notice there's a split right down the middle in the graphics on that car. It's an interesting story.
Yeah, so Matt Walbaum has run his Honda S2000 for a couple of seasons, but they suspected that chassis was torqued or something wasn't quite right. So they took Andy Smedgaard's old S2000. They took all the parts off of Matt's car, put it on Andy's car, and it's basically an amalgamation of the two, and they made the livery the same way as well. That's fantastic. Here's James Houghton, though, powering up the outside of Luke McGrew for... looks like that's actually Meadows in the 3, I believe.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Rosenberg in 1 lap has opened up a 1.1 second lead, really doing a nice job. And it was Meadows who dropped from that 3rd spot back behind Cattell and now gets back around him. But they're quickly losing some touch here. The other guy I wanted to mention real quick, 55 of Paul Darling, knows this track well, but he had a problem. He was one of those guys that had that massive overpressure on his tires, and they also had an issue in practice. So he said, I went into that qualifying really struggling. Then they had the overpressure issue, then the yellow, which really caught out a number of drivers that thought they had better time. Lena Chin said she was on a lap that would have been 0.8 quicker than where she qualified. That would have boosted her up well into the top 10, and that yellow came out. So there's a lot of quicker people that are back in the order a little bit.
Here comes Houghton out the outside of Eric Meadows through turn 7. The other thing to consider is tire temperature, even in a 15-minute race here when you're scorching these 200 treadwear street tires. We're not on slicks here. Jessica, over the course of the race, managing tire temp has got to be a big deal for those heavier cars as well.
Of course, yeah, that's another thing about the BOP. Heavier cars are more brutal on their tires. They use more fuel. Also harsher on the gearbox, harsher on everything. So I think whilst there are pros and cons to everything, weight counts for a lot. And it's also not necessarily worth that extra tenth putting in a better gearbox or something like that. So these are all key, and for a 15 minutes race perhaps maybe not quite so important, but of course these tires go off very quickly. Anything that isn't a slick can overheat very, very fast. So these are all things that will come into play, and we'll start to see maybe towards the end these things coming into effect.
Well, these are very long, a lot of these corners are long duration, so
yeah.
You're really pasting those tires, aren't you?
Yep, you are, and that will have a dramatic effect on the front tires as well, especially most of these cars look to be rear-wheel drive, but again the fronts which would normally mean that you lose the rears before the front. But in these circumstances with lots of long corners, they will be looking to lose the front at some point, inevitably as well. Yeah,
the 41 and the 82 running 3rd and 4th, those are both front drive cars, but the majority of the rest of the top 10 all rear drive at the moment. Battles throughout the top 10, but not for the lead. Matan Rosenberg lit up in purple, Greg, because he just ran the best lap of the race.
Yeah, I mean, he said the first time I felt really confident that I could go out there and run that qualifying pace for the entire race. He said the car just feels so balanced, and he said having the gearing right has made a huge difference. Now, how that will affect him at other tracks, we'll see. But here, it's right in that sweet spot, and he is making tremendous use of it. The other car that's interesting is Houghton's car. When I talked to him during the grid walk, whoa, who was that?
That was Robbie Veerhout down in turn 10B. He's pulled off to the inside, which if you're going to have a stoppage, that's not a bad place to be, but I don't know if that car got there on purpose or by accident, so we'll have to find out. Doesn't look like I can see any damage, but we do have a full course yellow at this stage.
This is a good time for them to be losing some heat in the tires during full course. Yellow's a perfect way to be reducing the heat of everything, really, not just the tires.
Yeah, and these races are short enough that we sometimes we get restarts, sometimes we don't. So if we do get a restart, you have to be ready. And again, single file with 50-something cars, you're going to be a long ways back. So the opportunities, drivers have to take them when they get the chance, Greg.
They do, and the guy who's going to be crying in his helmet right now is Matan Rosenberg, who had that big, he was at 1.6 seconds when that caution came out. That's pretty unheard of in this series, to have that big a lead. And so now he's just got to, refocus. And I mean, there's a little mental game I almost have to play when that happens, is just to, sometimes for a race driver, one of your best tools is a short memory, and just say, okay, that's different. Just focus on what's happening.
I'm sure, but in this scenario, I think he's probably going to carry a lot of confidence forward, knowing that he had a 1.6 second lead in only 3 laps. So.
This car here, Eric Catil, the number 82, this is an important weekend for him. This is the 1-year anniversary of him returning to victory lane in GRIDLIFE Touring Cup. And Jessica, the story of Eric Catil, I always tell this is one of my favorite stories of grassroots racing. He raced with us in a Honda Civic hatchback for a handful of years, crashed while racing for a championship at Road America, rebuilt this car from nothing in a handful of months, debuted it, and then a couple of months later, this car was upside down in the ditch on the side of a highway in a road accident on an open trailer. And then within 3 weeks, it was back on the podium in Watkins Glen. And at this event 1 year ago, after 2 years of trials and tribulations and accidents, it was back in victory lane. So that's the grit of grassroots racing.
That's quite a story, that is, isn't it? Oh, I'd love to see him on the podium at least. So no, that's I don't know what to say. That's a really. It's not lovely that it's had so many crashes, but it's a lovely story to see it right up there fighting at the sharp end as well.
Well, it's funny because he had won a championship before that, and what he did with this comeback, this multiple comeback, it just shows why. I mean, the guy is indefatigable. He will not be beaten, and it's just great to have him come back. And what I was going to say was that car behind that car there, that red and white Acura, talking with Houghton, he said, on paper, this car should not be good here. It's a heavier front drive car, and he said so it should really chew up those fronts. And he said, and for some reason at this track it just works. They must have the balance right, right. And he said, I'm not going to argue. I'm going to take it, but he said it always baffles me a little bit because it goes great here.
Let's talk about the engineering of GLTC. I'll tell Jessica another fun story. This car on the rear has a NASCAR-style kind of blade on the back, right?
It looks a bit NASCAR.
It looks a bit NASCAR, right? The rule in GLTC is that you're limited to a certain surface area size of that element, right?
Okay.
So his team decided, what if we made this bigger than it was allowed to be, and then we took a CNC machine and routed a bunch of slots into it, a whole bunch of slots, so it reduces the surface area, but maybe keeps the effectiveness of the larger dimension around the edges. I don't know if it works, but it's a really neat engineering.
This is something that they've done?
Yes, it's on the car right now. It's a little tricky to see.
It must be working. It's near the front. Very wise. Very
a lot of ingenuity. Yeah. It's the rule set here is, we describe it like a time attack style rule set. The rules tell you what you can't do, but they don't tell you what you can do. So, you can do a lot, and maybe you can see actually, he might be running the flat one at this point, the one without the slots in it, but it's interesting. He gave us the CAD file, so we know it's legal as far as the surface area, but just really neat engineering. A lot of the drivers in this field build the car themselves in their garage. There are some that have teams, that help them on the race weekends, but there's a lot of teams and drivers that are they show up on an open trailer by themselves and they run the weekend and drive home. There's been some drivers that have driven their cars to the track and driven home.
God, that's risky, isn't it?
That
sure
makes
is.
you go. I was ice racing once, and I was with my street car, And after Herm Johnson, who was an IndyCar driver way back when, was racing in the same series, and after the first session, when he was in a much faster class, so he would lap me a number of times. And I asked him afterwards. I said, "Herm, you were catching me. How did I look?" And he looked at me and went, "Like you have to drive that home." And I was like, "Oh, that hurt." So it is a perspective thing, but that spoiler deal. I mean, it's just more of that creative manipulation of the dark art,
right?
Of aerodynamics.
It's playing with the gray area, and that's when a rule set doesn't tell you exactly what you have to do.
Yeah.
Well, how do we get to that surface area? Well, we slotted some holes in it and made it bigger than it otherwise could be. It's very, very creative. As we ride under full course yellow for race 1 of 4. The other interesting note: tomorrow's race 2 is gridded by the fastest lap from race 1. So if this race were to complete under full course yellow, which may be likely, Matan Rosenberg would start right up front again, but that isn't necessarily the case.
Houghton would be on the outside of the front row at this time in this case. So, and Paul Darling, who I was talking about, Paul was he said, "Yeah, it's tough to do in a race with all these cars to get that fast lap in." And I said, "You just have to make it happen." And I said, "So I'm going to put that out in the universe for you. You're going to get a gap when you need it." And he just turned a lap where he should move up at least 2 spots. So you're welcome.
I'm going to look down the order and see where Ayrton Grimm has found himself after starting 43rd. The number 2 car. He is up to 36th at this stage, so he's moved up the order. Jason Kanakri, another time attack competitor from the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship, up to 35th place. Jackie Ding in that K-powered A86 up to 24th. That's another build he's been testing and tuning throughout this season so far. But
that's got to be one of the coolest GLTC cars ever.
It's
that
very
old Corolla with a Honda engine in it. And he is a wheelman, so when he gets that right, it's going to be fun.
Certainly. And then debut for Dana Basinski. He's currently 16th. Now, he was really quick in practice, so I bet he'll be a little disappointed in this. He said he wasn't going to set too high of an expectation, but his first wheel-to-wheel racing is this race. So P16,
first race.
Yeah, P16 in a 50-car field, not so bad.
No, yeah, and he actually had lost a couple of spots before he qualified, but yeah, he was showing some really good form.
Well, no, I think that's good form in top 16. First ever race on a 50-car grid field. I think that's very respectable, and I think he should actually be quite happy with that.
Yeah, I just know the race car driver mentality of, man, I thought I'd be top 10.
Yeah, but if is a big word for a racing driver, isn't it? And
boy,
it's definitely a big word for me. Yeah, but if
exactly.
if I'd have done this, or if I'd have been able to finish that lap or something like that, there's always a racing driver excuse somewhere. But I think that just shows the level of the field as well. It's seeing drivers excel and perhaps they're paying for their mistakes as well. I think you mentioned a driver earlier had made a mistake and they're at the back, and I think that just shows how competitive grassroots racing is. I think it's almost taken for granted how competitive these series are, and whether you're at the top of motorsport or at grassroots level, people are very, very fast all across motorsport.
I was talking to Eric Magnuson and during the grid walk, and he's won, I think, 4 championships in another sporting series called NASA, and then some of the regional championships there. And I asked him, I said, "So what do you think about GLTC?" And he just went, "The competition here is insane." The sharp end of this, there are some really talented drivers that get after it. And I think the other side of it, and I hope I don't jinx anything, assuming we go back to green here, but
great work by the rescue guys, by
fabulous.
the way. That car looked like it was stuck in the ground over there.
It did,
I think it must. I'm just speculating here, but maybe it got the front edge of a curb, because it looked like it was dug into the dirt a bit. So
exactly.
Great work.
But we've had one car. Everybody is still running one car out, and it was a pull-off. No wrecks, nothing. I mean, these guys understand, and again, I always talk about the ethos of GRIDLIFE Touring Cup with the overlap rule and racing with respect and, having fun. And it's never fun when you load up a wrecked car at the end of the weekend. And, I mean, look what they're doing here. It's beautiful.
The first thing, by the way, the lights on the pace truck are off, so we are going back green for at least a lap. We might get a white and a green. We might get 2 more laps, but the very first page of the GRIDLIFE Touring Cup rules isn't anything about a technical regulation. It's about driver conduct and the expectation on course, which is differentiating from other series out there. It's the expectation of the drivers first, technical reg second. You get the funny spoilers and things later, but it's all about loading the car back on the trailer without having to do any body work. So pace truck's going to roll back down the pit lane, and we should get at least one lap. We'll see if we get a white or if we'll get maybe more than one revolution around Gingerman Raceway. Matan Rosenberg in command, Luke McGrew, Eric Cattell, James Houghton, Eric Meadows, Jake Jornstad, Matt Walbaum, Paul Darling, Jensen, and Salil Shukla. Green flag back in the air, Greg.
And let's watch what happens here, looking at Cattell and what he's going to be able to do in Meadows using the power. Cattell going to that outside line. He's got the overlap on McGrew, Kyle.
Down the inside for turn 2. If McGrew loses this overlap here, I think Cattell's back to second place and has a run for Matan Rosenberg. Side by side behind him, too. Jake Jornstad had a look at Eric Meadows up to turn 3, and Houghton's poking up the inside for third place.
I was going to say Houghton was going to try and force McGrew wide up there with that overlap. McGrew, having none of it, just rolled a ton of speed. And now here comes Meadows in that second Corvette. Looked outside the inside, and here comes Jornstad with a big lunge, checked out of it in a hurry.
Down into 5 and 6 now. This is kind of a double apex situation. You track out a look. Whoa, one car straight off course. I think that might be Salil Shukla in that silver BMW. Just might have dropped the right side tires off the curb there. And no, that's actually Paul Darling that's done that.
Oh, no.
And that's a tricky spot because the car's tracking out, Jessica, and then you have to turn it back.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of marbles on the outside there, so it's really difficult to bring it back once you've got on that. But he's done well to keep it on circuit. I think the key is momentum when you go off circuit like that. If you stop, you can sometimes get beached. Oh, it looks like he's pulled off.
Yeah.
Oh, what a shame.
Wonder if something broke.
Could have, and again, I think the drop-offs off the curbs have been an issue here this weekend as well. So, getting the blunt ends of those things is no fun. But we have got a battle for the lead. Matan Rosenberg and Eric Cattell, nose to tail down the back straightaway. There's Peter Zhang stuck over there between 10B and 11. But Cattell's closing in, Greg, and we probably come into a white, I'd imagine.
White flag, yep, coming out here. There it is. So 1 to go, and this is where you were talking about it, Jessica, having those long caution laps for the heavy cars can cool the tire off, but there's a point where it almost gets too cool, and we're going to have to see who's able to. And remember, yes, there's a heavy Corvette, but those front-wheel drive cars, those front tires, because they do everything, they come up to temp in a hurry.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too difficult for a shredded tire to come back up to temperature, even on a safety car lap. I think for slicks, once you lose that temperature under safety car, it's almost impossible to get it back. But these should, they heat up quickly, but they also go off quite quickly. So it's a real balance between the two.
These two drivers battled at Carolina Motorsports Park a couple of months ago, and Cattell won the battle against Matan Rosenberg in an epic overtake. Knocked the corner light out of the front end of it, trying to get by, but now with a car length between them, Greg, half a lap to go at Gingerman Raceway. The challenge is his best passing opportunity is at the end of a long straightaway.
Absolutely, and that's tough because at a certain point relative to that Corvette, he's going to run out of a little bit of straight line.
Whoa, big slide for Rosenberg right up to the edge of the road there, Greg.
He is giving it every bit of welling he can right now, trying to hang on in front of Cattell. And we know Cattell's relentless, and any mistake, and Matan's looking in his mirrors going, deja vu, not again here. He has got to just nail this run and protect that inside maybe just a little bit.
Not a bad run. He's got a little bit of slipstream here into turn 11. It's going to be a braking duel, and if he can get a better exit than Rosenberg, he's in good shape.
Oh, he nailed that. Matan absolutely nailed that turn.
Coming back to the checkers, Matan Rosenberg wins at Gingerman Raceway. Drops a tire in the grass.
Ooh.
And Cattell second, Houghton third, McGrew, Meadows.
Interesting.
Your top
That's
five.
fastest lap for second place.
Cattell, there you go.
He'll be on pole for the next race.
Yeah, as long as it stands, you're right.
And Houghton and McGrew, they were side by side across that line. It was that close. McGrew took a serious run at trying to sneak through. Jornstad, it's going to be a nice finish for him after that great qualifying run. I think Matt Walbaum probably would be a little bit displeased knowing he was really feeling that car. And Lena Chin up from 14th in qualifying to a top result. 10. Wow. Fabulous run for Lena.
Absolutely fantastic run for her. And see Andrew Raines down in 21st. Thomas Lathrop down in 22nd. That's not a bad run for him either. Tony Barber, his first ever GLTC race, P37. But Cattell had a great run through the center of turn 10B down there at the bottom of the hill. And it's interesting, Jessica, when you watch the cars accelerate, the Corvette, that torque just digs right out of the corner. And at that point, I don't know that there was a lot Cattell could have done.
I don't think so, but it's certain, again, this is where BOP comes in. It seems that the second driver has the car slightly more underneath him through the corners, but the Corvette just has slightly more straight line speed. So I think that's going to be key for him at the start of the next race. If he can just keep in front of him and not let him pass on that first lap, he might have a better chance, but I think it'll be very hard for him to claw back should Rosenberg get him at the start.
And all three of these cars in a points battle as well.
Very close. And just to put it in perspective, on that last lap, Catil, the only driver to go sub 1 minute 40 at a 1:39.9. So he dialed it up when he needed to.
And he's been known to do that.
Yes, he has.
He can be a bit of a tornado, but in the best way when he needs to dial it up. And he did at Carolina Motorsports Park. We saw some last lap passes there and battling against the Corvettes and beat them there. So a loss for Catil this time, but he has set himself up well for race number 2 tomorrow morning. And James Houghton right there lurking in that number 41.
Yeah, and I see Eric Magnussen make up a few spots too. He's going to be pretty nonplussed about being still that far back. We know how quick he is. But considering what he had to deal with here, I think he did a fine job of working his way up through the pack.
And so race 1 is complete for GRIDLIFE Touring Cup here from the Midwest Festival. And the first of 4 races is complete. And full course yellow there for the 95, stuck down at turn 10B. Still not sure how he got there. A few others had mechanical failures. The 55 of Paul Darling and Peter Zhang as well in his turn-in concepts car. The Not Fast Motorsports car off to the left between turn 10B and turn 11. So Matan Rosenberg, 19 years old, picks up another victory. His first win ever in GLTC was last year at Road America. That track is built for this car. And here's a look at your top 10 and your results, Greg.
Yeah, and it's really impressive. Salil Shukla doing a nice job up there in the 9th. Eric Jensen actually set a really good lap during the race, so he might move up a little bit on the start. But I'll tell you, to me, one of the big stories here is when we get to the next page here. Look who's 30th, having made up 9 spots during the race here. I think we have seen something pretty impressive. You were talking about it as well, Jessica. Look at that name in 30th. Ayrton Grimm up at 14 years of age in this field, passing 9 cars in this race.
It's a very strong run for Ayrton Grimm in his first ever event here in GRIDLIFE Touring Cup. Sam Scott returning to GLTC action as well, P29. Kyle Hale, Matt Corrance. Jason Kanakary in his first GLTC race, 34th. Tony Barber, we mentioned, 37th. And Hans Horpedal, they had to drive an hour away to get a pedal sensor. They had an issue earlier, so they've been driving all around Michigan and got back just in time to get into this race, start at the tail of the field and finish P38.
And if we had a Hard Charger award, it would go to Joel Morrison, who finished 24th after starting 35th. 11 cars
Impressive.
He worked up in that kind of a field. And again, we had that one off. It was just for a pull-off. Otherwise, I didn't see any contact at all.
Yeah, we did a really nice job there. Here's a look at some of the highlights from this race. The start, very clean and tidy, but that driver's left choice didn't seem to work out for Luke McGrew. So if he is given that decision again later this weekend, he might go the other way, but we'll see how things pan out. Waldbaum and Houghton battling for position behind Meadows. Jake Chorenstein up there in the top 10. This battle was spectacular, Greg.
It was, and Meadows really feeling it this weekend, really excited about it. And then Luke McGrew and Catil here just absolutely hammer and tong. And obviously Catil was able to get in front of him. And then we had this 3-car scrum with Houghton, Meadows, Waldbaum, and right there Jornstad, who again had a solid run.
Yeah, and there's the 95 Robbie Verhout going back to the paddock on the rollback. That's no fun, but hopefully he can get whatever was broken fixed. As we sat behind the safety car for a couple of laps, got a 2-lap shootout to the end, and really the major change there was Catil leapfrogging Luke McGrew and jumping up into second place.
It just made an absolutely beautiful move. You see in the background there, the drive-off, and that was a little bit of an issue as well. But, here Matan looked like, all right, I've got it covered, but Catil was really close and set that fast lap, sort of, I think, serving notice that everybody else got to be a little careful. Look at that. Absolutely sideways move by Matan, and that allowed Catil to close it up.
And even closer to the Armco at the start-finish line there. Checkered flag for Matan Rosenberg. Jessica Hawkins, thanks so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you here. Final thoughts on a wild GLTC race?
New experience for me. I'm learning all the time, but no, very happy to be here. Thank you very much to Valvoline for having me here. It's been a great experience. I'll be back tomorrow. and I hope to be back in the future in more GRIDLIFE events. So yeah, thank you very much for having me, guys, and hopefully I'll come with a little more knowledge and experience next time.
You did fantastic. Thanks so much. And of course, the NOS TrackBattle Championship, we've got qualifying 1 coming up in just a short while. So we'll see you on the other side of a break for the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship qualifying 1.
Hi, I'm Chris Forsberg, and I want to tell you about Valvoline's Flex-Fill Gear Oil, which is designed by car people for car people. It comes in a pouch, which is specifically made to work in tight spaces, and it saves me time versus the old pumping method, so I can focus on things like keeping my drivetrain running clean. Unlike the pump, the Flex-Fill pouch leaves no wasted oil and no wasted time. Plus, it keeps my garage nice and clean from any spills. All you gotta do is put the nozzle where you need some oil, give it a squeeze, and you're ready for the road. That's why I protect everything in my garage with Valvoline. Valvoline, trusted for over 150 years.
Welcome to our world. A world of dirt, drift, and dodging fate. A world where all of motorsport collides. A world of digging deep, of grit, glory, and bitter defeat. Inhabited by the strong, the fearless, the barely sane. Welcome to our world. Welcome to the world of NOS.
High performance, year-round traction, long tread life. It's one tire with multiple personalities. Introducing the Azenas FK460, Falcon's all-new ultra-high performance all-season tire. With an advanced rubber compound that delivers confidence through every curve, in any condition, all year long, making the seemingly impossible possible. Learn more about the Azenas FK460 at falcontire.com.
Working on cars is hard, but it's worth it. It's tough, man. Building something new, something that nobody's ever done before is a pain, but I know how rewarding it is. I've been at this a while, trying to put all the stuff I've learned through all the years of track day stuff, work stuff, school, all that, engineering. I wanted to make something my own, and this is really the platform and palette that I'm using to do that. My name's Ryan Kristoff. I've been driving crazy Hondas since one of the first few Honda meets. I love GRIDLIFE. I've been around this for quite a while, doing an instructor program, helping out. What I love is just, I know where it came from. It came from a bunch of Honda guys renting track days, coming out here once a summer, and it really just evolved, and it was its own kind of organic community, and then just a lot of creative people that are in that community coming together and building this whole thing. Has been awesome. My car behind me is a 86 Honda CRX. It's a old SCCA GT race car. It's all tube framed. It ran old Weber carburetors and a really old school setup. The last 2 years I've been putting a modern engine in it. It has a engine from a 2021 Honda Accord, and it really shouldn't be in there, but it fits. Somehow it fits. So this car has been a race car all its life. I got it in 2017, and since then I've basically changed everything and made it my own, which has been really, really fun. Now it's turbocharged. I'm gonna run 170 horsepower, 200 foot-pounds of torque, and 2,200 pounds. So trying to get some testing done to go GLTC racing again. The car was fantastic before, but it ran a really, really small engine that really struggled versus some of these more horsepower cars. So we've got more power, got a little bit more weight, we've got a lot more grip, and a really, really trick suspension. So I'm stoked to get going and get racing again.
The eastern shores of Michigan are home to South Haven, a quiet resort town that blossoms every June with the arrival of GRIDLIFE Midwest. This year, it's the 11th running of GRIDLIFE's biggest festival, a summertime fun jam in the evenings and racing all day on the racetrack. And we're back again with the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship this time, with qualifying one in a few moments' time. Kyle Heyer joined by Greg Kramer for what is sure to be a very exciting weekend of drivers chasing the clock in 7 different competition classes. Welcome back, Greg.
Yeah, and doing it at the Granddaddy as well. This is where it all started, and it just has grown exponentially here. And we're getting ready now. I love this new format for the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship. You've got 3 qualifying sessions. If you're in the top 5 at the end of those 3 qualifying sessions, you go to the Podium Sprint. We'll talk more about that. Our first group's heading out.
They sure are, and this is a 2.2-mile racetrack, 11 corners around here, Greg, and this has been our home for the last 11 years, and it's got texture. It doesn't have a lot of elevation, but it does have a lot of long corners. It's a challenging racetrack. It's like an autocross course in a farm field here. It's a very fun place. It has some corners that are grippier than others. There's some camber fall-offs, off-camber places, but this is our home racetrack, and it is quick, but it doesn't have a lot of straightaway. Really the biggest opportunity from 10B to 11.
It is, but what it does offer is a real technical challenge. One of the trickiest parts is 5 into 6 right there, because you're literally running wide through 5. You're still turning when you start braking and downshifting for 6. There's tricky little spots like that. 7 into 8, increasing radius, but then you got to get back over, lined up for 9. As you said, really important. Again, turn in a little early for 10 and just wind it up around the outside all the way down here to turn 11. In this, it's not door-to-door racing, so you're looking to get a gap and then put in your fastest time. And the whole key is, at the end of 3 qualifying sessions, you combine all the times. If you're in that top 5, you go to the Podium Sprint to decide the trophies and the points.
Yeah, so it is a whole weekend of NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship. Of course, we'll conclude with that Podium Sprint tomorrow afternoon. But, of course, this GRIDLIFE broadcast is brought to you by Falcon, the official tire of GRIDLIFE TrackBattle, and NOS Energy, the official energy drink sponsor of GRIDLIFE and the title partner of the NOS Energy TrackBattle Time Attack, which are the cars headed on course right now. First class up is our Falcon Sunday Cup category, Greg. A spec tire, Falcon RT 660, and cars that are 25-to-1 power to weight. They have had 4 sessions on track so far this weekend, but all of them were practices. None of them counted yet as far as the weekend championship goes. The top 5 drivers of this Sunday Cup category will move on to the Podium Sprint. Everybody else, their best time of the qualifying sessions, the 3 that they get, that will be their final time for the weekend. So these do count, and it is important to go fast in all of them.
Oh, it's critical. And if you don't make it to that top 5, as you said, that'll determine 6th on back. And that beautiful Acuity car we were just watching there, that is the 130 of James Smith. And James really quick in the practice sessions in that Honda Fit, setting the fastest time at a 151.3, but it was only by about 2.5 tenths over Ryan Mukherjee in the 144, another Honda Fit, so it's close already.
And in the championship standings for 2024 so far, James Smith is currently 2nd. He's 41 points compared to Mike Jansen in the number 156. He's got 43, so it's 2 points between them. And Mike Jansen was 2nd at Carolina Motorsports Park, and James Smith was 1st at Carolina Motorsports Park. So they swapped positions. It was Mike in 2nd at the Rev Up, which was here a couple of weeks ago, and Smith 4th. So they have been trading blows so far this season, and I think that's going to be a fun battle to watch. Of course, you mentioned Ryan Mukherjee, who was just off the podium at CMP, but did win the Rev Up here 2 weeks ago. So Mukherjee might be the one to watch.
It's interesting, too, and you think about it here. You've got the Honda Fit, the top 2 guys at the points, Honda Fit and Mini Cooper. So it's not like one make is really dominating in this category. One thing that we know for sure, though, is that James Smith, he's a pretty good wheelman.
Yeah, certainly, and Smith comes across the stripe here, and we'll continue to monitor the lap times throughout the weekend. But here's a quick look at your championship standings. There they are, 43 points for Jansen, 41 for Smith. There's Mukherjee, Sam Dooling, who's working here this weekend, and Taylor Wargo, the other winner of an event this season. That was back at Willow Springs a couple of months ago. So those are your 3 event winners. Of course, we mentioned James Smith, we mentioned Mukherjee and Wargo, but the championship battle is still on.
And Mukherjee just set fast time at a 1:51.842 and is up by almost 3/4 of a second very early in this qualifying session. But boy, that's a great start for Ryan.
Yeah, certainly. There he is, the 144 winner from the Midwest Rev Up a couple of weeks ago, and that was one of our club circuit events. Of course, there are 5 rounds of the GRIDLIFE Festival Tour, and those are our big events that are, accompanied by music and our concourse and all the other things that come with what you know as a GRIDLIFE event. Of course, our club circuit rounds, of which there are a handful, are more motorsport focused. They don't have all the extracurricular activities, but Mukherjee came here a few weeks ago and won that event, and those points pay just as much as those this weekend. And this is a challenging event to win, so if he can repeat a podium and walk out of here with a big trophy, I think he'd be thrilled.
I think so too, and these cars are just small enough that you might get a little bit of a tow, and you just saw him run right back up on the backside there of James Smith, and now James is going to point him by, and that might just pay some dividends here for Ryan Mukherjee. If he did get a little bit of a tow there, we'll see what happens here. Now James lets him go, and that was pretty critical there. There you can see the times currently, and Mukherjee up by a chunk.
Yeah, 1:51.842. That's a really strong lap here to start this qualifying session off. It's almost a full second back to James Smith. And then Richard Sawicki, who's in the number 528, that's a very unique vehicle because it is one of the only rear-wheel drive cars in this category. It is his old GRIDLIFE Touring Cup NB Generation MX-5. He's detuned it so that it'll, or I guess restricted it.
Look what he did.
Well, up to the top of the board. So that's an interesting development, I think, Greg.
I think so too. And here is the number 88 of Reiser. And one of the things I love about these graphics here, folks, when you look at it, advancing means you're in that top 5. And were this to end like this, you would be advancing to the podium sprint. 6 and back are chasing, trying to get into that advancing scenario here. And again, this is going to change. We've got 2 more qualifying sessions, and it's the best time from any of the 3 qualifying sessions. But this gives us a real early understanding of who's looking impressive here. And Reiser, in this beautiful blue Mini, sits back in the 9th spot right now, and he's a fair chunk of change. It's a 52.5 that somebody would need to crack that. He's at a 53 flat, so he needs to find almost a half a second here.
And my favorite part about this graphics package there, you can see where Smith and Best are, 152.577 to a 152.738. There's about 2/10 between in and out of the podium sprint. In the podium sprint tomorrow, each driver in that top 5 gets 2 laps all to themselves on the biggest stage in grassroots road racing. So, yeah, you want to be in that podium sprint, and right now it's only 2/10 of a second separating those who are in and those who are out. You don't want to be out in an event like this.
Well, one of the things that I love about this too, Kyle, is the time attack format. If you're at the track, and especially if you're a competitor in it, it's incredibly exciting. But visually on a stream, it's just cars lapping, and you've got to be really tuned in. And I think GRIDLIFE, this new concept of the podium sprint, it's kind of revolutionized the presentation of time attack, and it's been greeted. The biggest test is, do the competitors, do the entrants like it? And to a person, they're saying they absolutely love it. And look at Reiser loving it right now because he needed to find half a second. He found about 8/10 and has jumped up solidly now into that advancing category.
And a few others have advanced too, and it's shifted the cut line up to a 152.3. So things have shifted around quite a bit. But that podium sprint format, Greg, the other thing that I love about it is that typically you're going to go fastest in the morning or when it's very cool, which, morning or evening. And as the track progresses throughout the weekend here with all the other activities going on, the track is going to get slower. So how do you create all the excitement at the biggest moment when everyone's here, everyone's watching? Well, you don't have to go the fastest you've gone all weekend in podium sprint. You just have to go faster than everybody else.
That's the key, and that's the important part. And you have to do it under a bit of pressure, right? It isn't like, okay, I can go out, put in a lap. Now that didn't work. I duck into the pits, make a tire pressure change. You've got to get out there. You've got 2 laps, and you've got to get it done then. And as you said, it's on the biggest stage right now because it's you and the car and the track. And that's what makes it, to me, really, really compelling to watch how it plays out. And it's also spectacular because the drivers, they're pushing hard, and instead of being, we're watching one car and the other one goes fastest, now we're watching every bit of those laps, and you can see where a driver found a little time or lost a little time. It really has changed the presentation. And as I was going to say, to a person, the competitors have loved this new evolution.
Yeah, Richard Sawicki chasing his way around Gingerman Raceway. The other thing about a rear-wheel drive car with these long corners is he's got probably better balance because the front tires and the rear tires are splitting the duties a bit, right? All the front-wheel drive cars, everything's happening with those front RT660s, the braking, the steering, the accelerating, all of that is on those front tires. And you're limited by width here as well, so you can't have a massively wide tire. They can get hot, so that's something that the MX-5 might have as an advantage.
Well, and he just showed, though, coming through 11, that even in one of the most well-balanced cars in the world, the MX-5, you can ask a little bit too much of it. And it wasn't anything big, but you could just see the car does what I call skated, just side slid, just that little bit. And that's where you've just hit that point where, it has 10/10ths to give, and you've asked 11 of it, and it says no.
And he has advanced his lap time of 151.15, and the cut line has shifted again. And my favorite thing is seeing Sam Dooling on this list, position number 5. He's in the Podium Sprint right now. Sam does a lot of volunteering for us and has worked for GRIDLIFE for some time at events. He's one of the drivers that will inspect your car, make sure it's safe before you go out on the racetrack, and we love to see him out there in the Abbott Auto Performance car. There he is chasing Richard Sawicki now, but he's in the show right now by 0.04 of a second.
It's so close. And is there a better name for a race car driver? You're out there dueling for it. That's just absolutely fantastic here. And yeah, to see him up in there, but it's only by 1/10 right now over Bocek. So, it's not like there are big margins here. And then take a look. Reiser is behind Bocek by about 20-something thousandths of a second. These margins, and these cars in particular, they're all cut from the same cloth. It's basically B-spec derived. You can detune the Mazda or whatever, but they're all incredibly close in performance. So you see these really tight times, and to have Sawicki on top by half a second, it's pretty unheard of at Sunday Cup.
I would say so, and everyone will be chasing the MX-5 here. There's a few others that are in that category running a rear-wheel drive car here this weekend, but there's dueling on the brakes. You're not on them for very long in a car like this. 25-to-1 power to weight, and most of these cars are going to be somewhere between 90 to 110 wheel horsepower, and very few outside of that. So you're maximizing your on-throttle time as Sam Dooling picks up to P3.
That's a great lap. And, one of the things when you're driving, as you said, a front drive car, and, so you're asking those front tires to do everything. Brake, turn, accelerate. The quicker you can come off the brake and roll a little bit more speed, so you're not asking them to do that dual duty. That means you also don't have to accelerate as hard coming out of a turn, so it helps you preserve those tires a little bit. That's the other thing that's great in a way about the Podium Sprint concept is in 2 laps, it's tough to really torture your tires to the point where they're just not going to function here as the checker flag comes out. So that's one of the interesting developments that I like here as well. But boy, I tell you, that time of Sawicki's, that was impressive.
Very impressive time. That's what everyone will be chasing. But all you have to chase is the 151.966 that James Smith has, and I'm a bit nervous if he's down in P5 at the moment. If he's chasing a championship, you have to maximize the rounds that you're running, and if you don't make Podium Sprint at an event like this, who knows what the rest of the calendar holds for him, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're entered in an event like this, you have to capitalize. Now, 4 rounds comprise your season championship points effort, so the maximum points you could get is 104 because you can get an extra point per weekend for an overall in your class track record. We don't or we do it by the drivetrain as well, so we split it out by rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, front-wheel drive. So what that means is perfect score, 104 points. We had 2 drivers do that last year, so you have to just absolutely maximize your championship run.
Well, and the other part of it is you're looking at the margins here. Obviously, we got that big gap. Sawicki, although out of Mukherjee, and then Sam Dooling, but from Dooling back, 29 thousandths to Chris Murray, 5 thousandths to James Smith. So it's incredibly small increments here. And look at that. Photographers, they will do whatever they have to get that primo shot.
That's Rob Wilkinson, one of our staff photographers, and he'll be stoked to see that shot later. And I always wonder how many times the photographers get photos taken of them when they're hiding in the bushes, getting shots for us for our website and our, some of the thumbnails as well for even the live streams have photos from all of our photographers and our in-house guys. I'm going to miss some, I'm sure, but Chris Sullivan, Matt Marcoux, Rob Wilkinson, we've got Creature on video here this weekend and a handful of others. So media team is a monster here at GridLife. They do so much to capture all the goodness.
Well, this is, one of these series that, perhaps more than most have truly embraced the social media aspect. I mean, that's the fans that come out here are savvy with social media, whether it's for cars or music, especially for these festivals. That's their life, and this series has said that's our audience, and do an incredible job of it. And I think every other series, whether more grassroots or pro, could learn a lot from how this series really works social media, no question.
Falcon Club TR is on track next. This is a record-breaking field for GridLife here this weekend. This is our largest time attack class we've ever had. 29 entrants in the Falcon Club TR category this weekend. We set a new record at the Midwest Rev Up 2 weeks ago at 27, and of course we had to beat it 2 weeks later. That's an enormous field in one category. You want to talk about competition? You have to beat 28 other cars in your class to win this weekend.
Yeah, that's just a staggering number. And in the practice sessions, only one guy got underneath a 1:39, and that was a 1:38.833 by the 727 of Mario Marone in his Civic, and he has been an absolute front runner from the off as well here, but he set a pretty good target out there. James Houghton was a couple of tenths off, and Houghton doing a lot of double duty. He's got some extra track time this weekend running in the GRIDLIFE Touring Cup as well.
Yeah, James Houghton has been pulling double duty all season long, actually. He's from Canada.
Yeah.
They drove down here for Rev Up just to run the time attack car, so he's not only running the events where it's both, he has come down and just run the time attack car. He accidentally won that event. I don't think he really meant to do that, but he went away with a win and a track class record for Houghton at the Rev Up a couple of weeks ago. So he'll be tough to beat. Mario Marone, as you mentioned, and Peter Granberg in this 511. Constant development on this car. Last year put on a heck of a show at this event, so I think he'll be a fun one to watch in this K-Power sponsored car.
It was interesting during the GLTC qualifying. We didn't get a chance to talk about it in the show, but in his GLTC car, Houghton had an off and just tore up the splitter in the underside of that car, and they were banging on it big time, trying to pound stuff back in place. And for him, he was over there helping. He is a very hands-on guy with that, but at a certain point, you have to just turn your attention now, get behind the wheel of your time attack car, your track battle car here, and focus on that.
So there's Granberg in the blue and white car, and then just behind the lighter blue and black car, that's Jeremy Bailey. It's a driver that I don't think we've talked enough about. Driving the number 13, it's this next car in shot, this one. That's Jeremy Bailey, Scion FRS. He's run a couple of events so far this season. He had a podium back at Carolina Motorsports Park P3, and at the Rev Up a few weeks ago, only 12th place. So I think he's looking to avenge his result a few weeks ago. New livery this season, and boy, it is sharp. You can see it from a mile away, and it's the color code of GridLife. It's teal and purple.
That's just oozing paddock vibe, isn't it? That's what it's all about here. He was 6th in the combined practice sessions at a 140.1. And, once again, behind he was off just a little bit from Marone's time, but for everybody else, he was right in that window. So he certainly has opportunity here to be right in the hunt for that top 5.
And he's in that Scion FRS platform. We see so many of these FRS BRZ 86 chassis. Sometimes they're powered by their FA20 engines that they would come with the flat 4-cylinder. Most of them are K-swap with K24 engine. But the top 10 in the championship standings, it's all Integras, Civics, twins, FRS BRZs and whatnot, and there's an Integra that snuck in there. So I think I mentioned the Integra, but the S2000s as well. So it's really a handful of chassis with a lot of Honda engines in this championship, but it's fun to watch them kind of build their own Lego set of what a Club TR car should be.
Absolutely. And when you say K-swap, for people that are just watching, what is that engine?
So the Honda K24 is an engine that Honda sells in a variety of their road cars, right? So Civics and TSXs and things of the sort. It's the basic Lego brick of any GRIDLIFE track car. It is an extremely reliable and high-power 4-cylinder engine. You can get about 240 to 250 horsepower if you're really pushing the natural aspiration of them, but they're exceptionally reliable. They're very easy to work on, and so you can pretty much stick them in anything. So if this class allows engine swaps, so you might as well drop in a K24. The one thing you can't do is you can't open the motor up, right? It has to be a stock engine with bolt-ons. Is about all.
So can you take a K-swap motor and put it in a different brand of car?
Yes.
So it allows you, so you can really make those levels of changes. So you can have a Scion FRS with a Honda engine in it, and then we can have an Integra driven by a guy named McLaren.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Evan McLaren in that 514. Yeah.
There's the vibe for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So having a look at some lap times, James Houghton to the top at a 138.784. There's the 511 Peter Granberg. He is outside of the podium sprint by how much? 0.05 of a second. That's what he's chasing right now.
So close right now. And Houghton, that's the fastest lap that we've seen turns so far this weekend. Yesterday and this morning was just practice sessions, which don't count for the chase to the podium sprint. But still in all, it gives us a good reference point. And I don't think the track's that much faster. I think that's just tweaking on the cars. Obviously you step it up for qualifying over what you would run for a practice pace.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of green on the timing and scoring. So a lot of people going quicker in their second, third, and fourth lap. And as we move up in the class categories throughout this afternoon, we're probably going to see that go away. These cars might run their fastest lap 3 or 4 laps in, but some of the track mod cars, the unlimited cars, they might only get 1 or 2 laps before they're overheating tires and brakes and engines and all that. So these cars let you have a little bit more time on the racetrack to find and extract speed before you have to head back down pit lane and cool them off.
And the one thing here is that keeping this track, I think, beautiful slide there. Keeping this track pretty good right now is, yes, we've had unrelenting sun all day, but the temperatures aren't very high. We're in the mid to upper 60s is all here, and we're not that far, keep in mind, from Lake Michigan. So it's relatively cool. Now, it's going to go to the mid 70s tomorrow, we're hearing. Plus, there's potential for some other stuff happening. But there's going to be a qualifying session for this group earlier in the day tomorrow morning, and if it's dry and if it's even cooler,
that's your go time.
That could be that one moment where you better be ready for that one. So there is strategy to play here. I mean, you're looking at the weekend schedule going, all right, when do I really need to be dialed for that session, which would likely be the quickest one.
Peter Granberg improved and knocked out Jeremy Bailey. So a 140.6 puts the 511 in and Bailey out for now. The Whiskey Danger Racing guys, P7 at the moment. You see Nick Poulsen, Ian Flavin, Graham Gaylord, they're all shifting and shuffling in 7th through 10th or so. And again, they've got more time. This is just the first of 3 qualifying sessions, but I would be a bit worried if you're not near that cut line at the moment. If you're down in 12th through 15th, you probably got a bigger deal. Now, there is a car that is slowing on track. Is that the 123? No, that's the 326.
Yeah.
Now, this might be my fault. And I'll explain here in a moment. So this car is Stan Feingold, and I believe if everything had gone to plan, they have the throttle body from my Scion FRS in it right now. And either my throttle body also just died, or it wasn't their problem.
So either way, it's going to be perhaps a long day for them, or it's going to be a rough drive for you trying to get home.
I didn't really think about them. If it breaks or fails, I didn't really think about that part. I'll figure it out. But we got it rolling again. Just Control-Alt-Delete there.
Maybe it was just a little electronic glitch.
Yeah, but he's been having some issues with that car so far, unfortunately. And
well, he's 3rd right now, so it's quick when it runs, and we want to make sure that he's got an opportunity to keep that thing running, obviously.
Yep. So, well, I don't know it's going to go too much farther. He's off track about as much as he can get. But we've had a couple of minutes for Falcon Club TR cars to set sometimes. Here's an interesting car, the 373. That's a Volkswagen Jetta, it looks like.
Yeah.
Wow. Got to pull that one up on my list. That's Ben Smolin in the 2019 Volkswagen Jetta. was actually originally entered in Sunday Cup, so I guess he's gone to Club TR because they couldn't get it down to power to weight for Sunday Cup. So he is going to be struggling a bit, I think, to make speed in this category. It's a big, heavy car for this class, and certainly not prepped to the limit of the rules, but I admire the dedication to giving it a shot.
No, he's out there going after it, absolutely. And the other thing I wanted to just, he's getting a little bit of rotation there, too, that I wanted you to explain to people. You were talking about how that K20 is kind of the base of a lot of grid life stuff. This class is about as close as it gets to a GLTC class. So we can see people running here without doing too much to the cars be absolutely competitive in GLTC.
And we've seen that with Dana Basinski, who's our champion from last season. Big slide for Smallin and drops the tire, sticks the hand out the window. Point by, please.
That's impressive. But he was still correcting and pointed by there. That's class.
I mean, that's courtesy, I suppose. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this is as we get the full course yellow now, and another slide there for the Jetta. Tires are angry, I think.
I think so.
I mean, this is a class it's not designed to be a GLTC feeder class, but the modifications that you make are fairly similar, and we've seen Basinski not really have to add a whole lot, and he jumped right into GLTC, finished top 15 in his first race today. So we've seen Ben Thorne do the same. He's not here this weekend, but he was at Carolina Motorsports Park. So it's a really neat category. It's also one of the Grid Life native classes, and when I say that, in the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship, we have 8 different categories if you include Super Unlimited, and a number of them are categories that are kind of designed to catch other categories from other time attack organizations, but there's a few like Club TR and Street GT that are native Grid Life rule sets, and they also happen to be some of the most popular, including Sunday Cup. So Club TR is one of those, and perhaps the best example.
Yeah, and I mean, just look at, you were talking about it, a record entry, the size of the entries coming out here. It's a class that's attractive on a lot of different levels, and that makes it really compelling. But we have a full course caution out there.
So this is a new procedure.
New thing, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is a new procedure for this weekend and probably going forward. For the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship. Typically, if there's a car on course or a recovery or mechanical issue, you would have to black flag all, which would send all the cars back down pit lane and have to regrid and sit in pit lane with their engines running. This allows cars to keep moving, keep things warmed up, but not overheating, and we can go address the problem behind the control of a safety car and then turn everyone back loose again and hopefully save some time and preserve everyone's energy of having to put cars on and off a pit lane all the time. So new procedure in force this weekend, and looks like Stan got that car moving, but it doesn't seem very happy.
No, it's chugging along here, and I think it's a smart move. He kept moving then stopping, and that's why they had to come out with that full course caution. Safety is always going to be paramount. I think this is a nice move. You put that safety truck behind it, and you let that pace car lead the field around. This is, you can't pass under yellows, and but when you have that white flag at each corner station, letting the drivers know there's a slow-moving vehicle, in this case, a safety vehicle up front, and as you said, it just, once you go black flag and everybody pits, to then get them back out, get back up to speed, get a warm-up lap in, it's just time-consuming.
Now, there is one difference between this safety car rule and the one that we have in GLTC. And the rule in GLTC is you are forced to bunch up the field. Not so in this regulation. You can actually create a gap very safely. You can establish a gap that you would like to carry on once the yellow flags are dumped free. So that's a bit of a different rule, and the car that is picked up might not be the fastest car on track, so you're free to kind of shift around on course so that when we go back green, we are saving time versus everyone re-gearing again to go. So
this is akin to like the European version of a virtual caution, a virtual yellow, just with a safety car out there, but you don't have to worry about the pack up. And look, here's the nice part. Safety car's in. Now that first car followed him in, but they're going to come around. There'll be a green flag, and we're just right back at it again. Yeah,
the double yellows have been withdrawn from the turn 1 corner station, so we should be getting back underway here in a moment. So here we go. Green flag back out, and we're back underway. That's a beautiful thing. That would have been a black flag all. We would have had everyone sitting on pit lane. They'd have to do a whole other warm-up lap again. So a great usage of this new regulation. There's the 123, the Whiskey Danger Racing guys, the S2000, currently 7th and about 4/10 off of a spot in the TrackBattle Podium Sprint at the moment.
And that's another cool aspect of this dynamic here in Grid Life is if you want to have a couple of guys, or guy and gal, whatever, sharing a car, you can enter as a team and still get the championship points for the team. But be able to do it, since we don't have any long races where you do driver changes, you can, there's 4 GRIDLIFE Touring Cup races. You can have 2 each. You can have people go out and run sessions here, and that just opens the window up. People can split a car expense, makes a big difference.
It sure does, and that's partially because the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship isn't just about the driver, right? They're not running spec cars. It's about the build of the car as well. And in some of the categories, like Unlimited, it's pretty much just about the build, and the driver just has to extract it. Running the team format allows you to kind of split the drive time a little bit and have fun with your buddies. And it's always fun to know who's in the car. So the team things always frustrate me a little bit, but it is fun to watch them get after it. And there they are down the back straightaway, heading towards turn 11. And I imagine we'll get a few more laps in before we check her on this and move on to our Street and Street GT Street Mod categories, where the power levels start to come up in a big way.
And the street cars are as close as we've got to stock, say maybe Sunday Cup.
The Street GT category.
Yeah.
The Street GT, you can't change any engine internals. You can't add any aftermarket aero. So that category is designed for 5, 6, and 8 cylinder cars, and you don't really do a lot to them. Can't run wider than OEM tire width. A lot of rules that keep those cars, in a pretty competitive state while retaining stock parts. MR2
out there, Turn In Motorsports. I stopped by and chatted with them. They're fielding 7 cars in different categories here this weekend. That group has become a huge supporter of GRIDLIFE, haven't they?
They really have, and of course, Turn In Concepts team, and they call themselves Not Fast Motorsports at times as well. Some of the drivers do anyway. They've really brought a great group of cars and a wide variety, too. They've got a couple in GLTC, some of the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship. Tony Barber typically runs a Model 3 in street category, but he's changed over to GLTC. So lots of they're spreading the gamut of the GRIDLIFE experience, and they've been here for a long time, and we always appreciate them coming out with their big trailer with lots of things in it.
I love seeing an MR2 out running here. That's Azmat Muhammad. And right now, in the 11th spot, has a little bit of work to do if he's going to eventually move up. But it's not this, he's got a 143.1, so he needs, to find a bit of time. But this car, kind of like that, the Mazda MX-5, those little MR2s, really nicely balanced cars and light. They don't take a lot out of the tires.
Yeah, they're certainly very light. They're a mid-engine car, and there are a couple different generations of MR2, and a handful of them had, I wouldn't call it an issue, but a characteristic of off-throttle oversteer or snap oversteer. So you lift off the throttle, they just snap around on you. So they can be a bit challenging to coerce into really making a time attack car. We don't see a lot of them, but they're very nice cars, and it's fun to see them applied with, especially with a rear wing the size of the trunk on it.
Yeah, exactly. That thing is huge. And that may be what they're trying to do to stop that off-throttle oversteer, which tells me it's one of those mid-engine cars. I think that engine might be a little bit farther back in the chassis than you think, because that sounds to me like a pendulum swing.
Yeah, and I think that was mostly the second generation. This is the third and final generation of the MR2. And this particular car, it's just that short wheelbase. It's so little. It's a little car, so it's very nimble as far as changing direction, but you don't have that high-speed stability that you might need in places like 7, 8, and 9 on this track.
These cars used to tear it up in autocrossing.
I'm sure.
Because of that short wheelbase,
right.
Exactly the same thing.
So checkered flag here for the Falcon Club TR category, and James Houghton establishing himself as a favorite, half a second clear of everybody else. That is a warning sign, and
that's a statement.
Shot across the bow for everybody else, isn't it?
You bet it is.
And Evan McLaren impressively jumping up to second place. Oh, Stan Feingold, the 326, he made it up to fourth place.
He did. Well, he was third for a bit.
Oh,
he was third, and then after he had his problem, he got pipped back as Maroney was able to slide by. But yeah, I mean, he's had that issue, but before he got there, he's advancing at this stage.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll find out, because if whatever part they took off my car didn't work, they will bring it back to me probably. So that's not the first time that my car's come apart at a GRIDLIFE event.
That's true.
Last time was, I think, 2022 at Heartland, and it was Piero Pucci from ASM They have a lower control arm still on that car. But again, it doesn't go anywhere all weekend. You might as well, right?
Yeah.
So if you can help get someone on track. And Stan Fingold.
It's nice of you to bring a parts car for you.
Well, Stan Fingold, he's a podium-capable driver, and it would stink to not be able to get a run.
Yeah, true.
When you come to this big event and you don't get a shot to go. So that would be no fun. Up next is going to be our street category, and we'll see how things have landed. If we're going to get, yes, we will, Street and Street GT will be the next group out on track here, Craig. So this will be fun.
Yeah, we're starting to. This is where you start to see the pace pick up a bit here.
So this is going to be our street class cars, which for those that aren't familiar with our different categories, you can run aftermarket ECUs. You can basically bolt on the heck out of a street class car. And you can do quite a bit to them, but you see a lot of very powerful all-wheel drive cars, Evos, STIs. That's kind of the dominant category of car. You see some Civic Type Rs. Dustin Williams is out there, one of our Valvoline buddies. He's on track in an FL5 Civic Type R, brand new car. And then in our Street GT category, that's a class that you can't do a lot. We talked about it earlier. 5, 6, and 8-cylinder engines. No aftermarket aero, no wider than OEM tire size. Can't open up the engines. So you get what you get. And you see a lot of Supras, Corvettes, Mustangs, Camaros, that sort of thing. Luca Barberis, Greg, street class winner from last season. And here he is into turn 11.
And he topped the combined practices, so he immediately says, I'm out to defend, and I'm serious about it. And just as a target time, he had a 1:35.651. Now, when you were watching cars heading out onto the track, there was a Super Unlimited car that was out there as well, and that's just because of the times that car was running. It's called a 360. It's the number 36, driven by Daniel Cummings, and it looks very unstreet.
So what that car is it's a Subaru 360 that has been completely dissected, and all the body panels have effectively been bolted onto a completely custom chassis. And the idea was it was one of the Grassroots Motorsports build challenges where they had to build a car for under $2,000. And he cobbled together a chassis and bolted some old body panels on it to make it look like an LMP3 car. And it is a work of art. If you haven't seen that car up close at a GRIDLIFE event, you have to make an effort to find it. And hopefully we'll get to see some more of that on track this weekend.
Yeah, it's a wild-looking machine here. But again, in this combined group, this guy, Luca, was the quickest. Second quick was about 3/10 off, and that's the 555 at Joe Mielke in a WRX STI. And then the 104 Ben Lynn was third in his Mitsubishi Evolution. And there's a little bit of a theme running there, isn't it? A lot of all-wheel drive seems to be the way to go in this class.
It seems to be, and you mentioned Ben Lynn as well. The other half of the Gears and Gasoline duo, you're familiar with Ben Thorne from GRIDLIFE Touring Cup and past in Falcon Club TR. Ben Lynn returning to time attack action here this weekend, and he will be a threat. I don't know that he's ever been in a Podium Sprint because the last event he ran,
that's right.
I think we were running the old format, so he has never gotten a chance to run in the new format at the pointy end. So excited to see what Ben Lynn thinks. And there's the 104. There he is as he rockets down the front straightaway and puts a time on the board, 1:38.034.
Yeah, and it's Barberis on top, a little bit off of his best practice time. That's at a 36.1, call it a 36.2 right now over Hulka. And Hulka is just a perennial front runner, isn't he?
Yeah, certainly is. That 777 team, always in a Subaru. They've traded cars. You see it there. It's the hatchback that's chasing Ben Lynn at the moment. New livery on board the car this year. It's white instead of black, so it looks a little different. But yeah, certainly Josh Hulka knows how to get the most out of that car, and he will be a threat for this top 5 here this weekend. Dustin Williams, top 5 early here in the session in that FL5 Civic Type R. That's not a bad lap at all for a front-wheel drive car.
Not at all. I mean, he was 8th in the combined practice, and so he's dialed it up just a little bit. At a 39.6 in that combined practice. He's darn near there already on his first flyer.
Yeah, great lap to start things off. And Ben Lynn backed out of it, gave a point by to Josh Hulka, who goes around the outside of turn 7. And again, one of my favorite generations of STI, little slide there, right out to the edge of the road, pushing the limits in that all-wheel drive.
Well, and that's where that all-wheel drive, can save you. If you know how to drive an all-wheel drive car, and there's an art to it, but you do a couple of different things on the pedals, And if you get the rotation right, you just get that little bit of a drift, then you go hard to throttle. And even though you get squat on the back, those front tires will just pull you around the corner. But you've really got to induce almost that little bit of a back slip on it. It nulls out what would become a big push normally, and it works. It's incredibly effective.
He was hustling that lap, but it was not quicker. He'll stay P2 in the first session of the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship qualifying.
Did you see him just drift all the way through one there? He is definitely pushing the envelope here.
Yeah, trying to extract as much as he can. And I think he got a bit too much leaving turn 10B, which is at the far end of the course. Just hustling around, kind of yanking around the wheel a bit, couldn't get it to land. There's that Super Unlimited car that you talked about. It's the only one entered this weekend, so there's no points associated with its running. But yeah, the Subaru LMP 360, you see the GRM logos on the side. This is a really neat story and just a very cool car to see up close. Homebrew, home built.
Homebrew, home built. And the one thing, it's got lots of aero bits on it, but that windshield is pretty much an air brake. And the reason it's running here and not with the unlimited class is lap times. This car, it's a work of art. It's really cool, but it is not an absolute speed demon. It just doesn't fit anywhere else. And so that's why it's running in a group with similar lap times. And it's just fun to see it out there running. And it's got such a unique sound to it, doesn't it?
Got a Subaru Boxer 4.
Yeah.
So it's got that typical Boxer engine sound. I love this car. I don't know that we've ever really seen it on a GRIDLIFE live stream before either. So this is probably the first time. It's been around, but I don't think it's been at the bigger festival events. So it's great to see Daniel Cummings out here, you know, giving us a show, because this is, you know, homebrew car craft to its finest here. I mean, this is not a kit car. This is assembled from parts and pieces laying around, and it is, it's like just a sculpture that he's created on four wheels.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that's some serious extractors coming out of the back of the car. You can't even call that a diffuser. Those are extractors. And the whole idea there is those things open up and they speed the air up that is going underneath the car. And as you speed it up through those extractors, creates a little low pressure area under the car, and it literally sucks it down onto the track just a little bit. And we have a caution flying.
Yeah, over in that corner too. Daniel sounded like he was going straight, so he might have gotten through it, but there he is. But there was a yellow waving at the turn 7 corner station, but we're not full course just yet, so see if we can get eyes on that. Oh, there's eyes on it. There's a car down there at turn 10B off to driver's left, kind of in the weeds over there. So.
Yeah, those you know, they're close there.
Yeah, I mean, 10B, you're going downhill. It's kind of a blind corner, and the braking zone comes up on you quick. It's the 45 of Lizabelle there.
It looks like that. I don't know how, because normally you go straight off there, and it drops, but it's a big open area. And he somehow got really close to the edge over there.
Yeah, and you know, there's the full course, and you try to go off straight now. The Gingerman Raceway's installed some sand traps that are pretty deep, and you don't want to go off sideways into those because it can roll the car over. But I'm not sure if he pulled over there or had something else happen. But we will once again deploy the pace car, and this new procedure, Greg, is saving us so much track time.
It is, and you know, I mean, you may be sitting here going, "Yeah, wait a minute, you know, time a cat, you know, attack with a full course caution." But when you see how quickly we get back to a green flag as opposed to the black flag, everybody into the pits, you then go, "Oh, this is great." And you know, talking to a couple of the GRIDLIFE officials who've been polling some of our NOS Energy Touring Trackbattle Championship competitors, they've said, no, you know, we thought it was pretty weird when we heard about it, but actually it has given us more than a couple times 2 or 3 more laps than we would have maybe had otherwise. So they're good with it. They're good with it.
Yeah, for sure. Sam Bosnia just ran his best lap coming to the start-finish line there, where he picked up the full course yellow. The rollback is sailing. The rescue guys are working overtime today and making good speed around turn 5 and 6 at the moment. There's a look at Gingerman Raceway and the festival grounds, Greg, and tonight the festivities start, and they won't stop until tomorrow. Well, I guess it would be Sunday morning at about 2 in the morning is when things will really quiet down. But
and in that bottom right corner, you just folks saw that big tent go out of your screen. Well, just to the right of that, here is a big stage and a huge performance area. There you can see them panning over. There you can see it there, and that will be rocking and packed after we're done here today.
Yeah, headlining acts this weekend. Zed's Dead is the big headliner, which I was really stoked about because I knew Zed's Dead, which isn't typically the case with some of these. But it's a great lineup. We've got Mersive, Tate B, and Barely Alive, Easy Baked, and some others on this list. But Mersive is headlining tonight, Zed's Dead tomorrow, and everyone that has joined us here for the 11th Annual GRIDLIFE Midwest Festival is in for a treat. Of course, we're bringing this experience to Wisconsin and Road America, the National Park of Speed, next month at the tail end of July, and it will be Dead Mouse that is highlighting the Saturday night festivities at Road America. You can get tickets at the Summer Apex website, summerapex.com, for GRIDLIFE's third of 5 big festivals this season.
And if you haven't been to Road America, it's about halfway between Milwaukee and Green Bay. It's not too far, about 20 miles from Lake Michigan, but it's in Wisconsin Lake Country, and it is absolutely stunning there, especially that time of year. It's beautiful, and there is so much to do just in general there with the lakes and everything unfolding, and Road America is an absolute jewel. It is an incredible facility. And for them to have agreed with GRIDLIFE, and it's one of those big venues that is always improving, but they also understand that they've got 4 miles of racetrack there, but they've got a lot of acreage that can do other things, and they embrace that concept. And now having GRIDLIFE bring one of their festivals there, I think it's going to be spectacular.
Yeah, of course, Road America is the next stop on our festival tour, but of course we've got Circuit Legends in August, which, Greg, I'm so excited to have you. It's an event made for you. I'm so excited. That is a celebration of all the cars that really built the GRIDLIFE ethos, right? So it's all the tuner cars from the 1980s to now, and it's a big celebration at a small place, and that's Lime Rock Park. It's got a big history, though. That is August 18th to 20th, 2024, and we'll finish our festival tour season at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. What a spectacular debut event that was last September.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat the Monterey Peninsula. That time of year, obviously, it's just beautiful, and that track is something special. It's a legendary venue in its own right, and then bringing last year, it was absolutely awesome. Just what we were running there, and now bringing the festival concept there as well. It's going to be spectacular, and I just love this new concept for GRIDLIFE of the festival tour and the club tour. So if and you can run everything for the full championships. You can pick and choose. You can do whatever you want, but there's opportunities for all.
Look at the line on the far left of the screen.
Look at that.
And we've got a lot of people here, but there's a lot of day folks still coming in to join us here tonight for the festivities. Some campers still loading in. And what I've heard is that the loading in process has been pretty efficient, and you see cars moving there. They're getting them in, and the line wrapped around the facility as we're parking people up for tonight.
Yeah, that's just amazing. And the other part is in some of these open areas that you see, not here, but off to the right a little bit. Tomorrow there's going to be car shows and displays and concours almost. Everything is embraced here. This is the most inclusive, racing series that you can imagine, even to the point, and I wanted to mention this, 2 years ago when I was here for my first time, the announcement was made of the partnership with I think it was Racing Pride North America.
Correct. Yep.
To recognize that there are some very talented LGBTQ competitors and fans, and saying you're welcome here.
Absolutely.
Come and share with us. And to me, that's a groundbreaking moment and one hell of a statement for GRIDLIFE, saying, come here.
So GRIDLIFE's ethos, and from the very beginning, Chris Stewart and Adam Jabay, the two co-founders that created GRIDLIFE, they were buddies that had friends that did all sorts of things with cars. And the question came up, how do we get all these people to interact with each other? Because they're all doing the same thing, just with their different niche. So the GRIDLIFE festivals came as a way to introduce drifters to grip racers and grip racers to drifters, but it doesn't stop at the cars. It's an amalgamation of everyone's cultures and values. And I think, you mentioned in Pride Month, the LGBT Racing Pride partnership in the past. Yep. It's a very inclusive paddock because racing is for everybody. Motorsports is for everybody, and that is what's so important. That's what drives GRIDLIFE forward as we continue to add the experiences for everyone to come out and enjoy. So it's a big, big part of it, and we're back underway, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. And you know what? A car doesn't care what you look like or who
exactly.
you love. They just want you to love them. Period.
Exactly.
And we're getting right after it here. That was pretty.
It was. Josh Halka is wasting no time getting his tires back up to temperature, sliding through turn 2. Probably not going to get a whole lot of laps to end this session for the street and potentially street GT categories as well. But Halka is absolutely cooking in his 777 Subaru, isn't he?
Well, he's pushing it really, really hard. I mean, he's carrying these long slides, and that isn't necessarily the fastest way to go. But, he's certainly exploring where that grip is. Here's this really tricky corner I was talking about, 5 into 6. And as you're going through 5, if you're carrying speed, you're braking and turning at the same time. And, man, that is a tightrope walk to get that right.
It sure is. And then the 7 to 8 to 9 transition, depending on what car you have, you take it completely differently. But some drivers will track all the way out, ride the rim of the outside of 7, and then tuck in tight for turn 8 to widen those fast corners at 9 that lead to, in GLTC, what would be a passing opportunity. For time attack, you're setting up for this drag strip back to turn 11.
That's exactly it. And listen to that howl coming out of that turbo and just getting that drive. That was really, really nice. And you just unwind the wheel, and you have to have confidence to do that. Because there are times when you think, I'm going right off the outside edge of this track. And you just have to believe, nope, the track is going to track out with me here. Now let's see how he gets through here. That little slide, that wasn't bad. That wasn't bad. He could have used a little bit more track at the exit, which means he could have carried a little bit more roll speed, but still doing a nice job.
Yeah, and checkered flag is out, so that was it. They got one more lap, and Halka did not improve, but Moore did in the 193, a 139.272, and that will widen the valley between himself and Dustin Williams. But I'm impressed with Williams in that Valvoline branded FL5. There he is.
Yeah.
That's a great run for a front-wheel drive car, and Dustin has been here a couple of times, but this car, he is geared up for a shot at a podium sprint.
Well, and it was developed by a Formula One tester and
developed
W Series driver
yes.
here. Just setup info.
Yeah, Jessica Hawkins
exactly.
drove this time attack car earlier in the weekend, and we had her on for race 1 earlier today. So if you missed GLTC race 1, go back and listen to that. It was a blast. And Dustin,
what a talent she is.
Yeah, very talented. But Dustin getting a lot out of that car in the first of 3 qualifying sessions this weekend. And I don't think that there's a ton done to that car either. Sure there's some things, but it's not. It's
probably not full on prep.
Not full on prep.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah. Kevin Wendt, I wanted to point him out down in 15th place. Kevin is one of our longtime GRIDLIFE buddies, and currently he's working on the back end of compiling all of GRIDLIFE's results data and making a filterable and searchable database, which I'm very excited about. We've been talking about that for a long time. Another driver we should point out, Eddie Siegel in the 470. That's another Honda Civic, the prior generation to the one that Dustin Williams is driving. And Eddie has been on the podium in the past. Some work to do for the 470, it looks like, Greg.
Yeah, right now sitting in that 10th spot, and his best time is a 1:40.17, and it's a 39.2, so he needs to find about 2.5 seconds. But you never know. I mean, obviously you may have just missed the setup a little bit here. Somebody just nailed a really nice lap. We talked about tomorrow morning's qualifying 2. That could be a little quicker track. You could make some times up here. You never give up. And even if you don't advance, and obviously you want to be in the podium sprint, that's the showcase. But even if you don't, if you're 6th, that's good points.
Good points, 14 to be exact, and that will carry on to the rest of your championship run. As far as the rest of the weekend is concerned, though, tomorrow we're going to be broadcasting GRIDLIFE Touring Cup race number 2 tomorrow morning, and then at about 1:15 p.m. is when everything fires off. Got about a 6-hour show with GLTC races 3 and 4, the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship qualifying 3 and Podium Sprint. We've got some drift coverage we'll have tomorrow. We're going to be Gray sitting up here. Gray sitting up here with me, but also Gray Sitting is his last name. So he'll be joining me for a little bit of drift coverage, and we've also got some content to share with you along the way. So very excited for that. Next up on track is our Street Modified and Street GT categories. There was one Street GT car in the previous session. This is the rest of the field.
All right. I understand that was a little tough to get Gray sitting with me. So, yeah, I get that. So, yeah, now this is where, the guys that like to play with the car a little bit, not so much Street GT. That's quite stock. But Street Mod, there's a lot you can do to a Street Mod car.
There's a lot you can do to a Street Mod car, and, we'll see some cars that are around 600 wheel horsepower in that category, and really what limits you is the 200 tread wear tires that you have to run. You can't go any stickier than that. And the rule about Street Mod, you have to abide by the ice cream rule. Can you legally take your spouse to go get ice cream in that car? If you cannot, the car is not legal. So it must be able to go to the ice cream shop and drive back and go on the racetrack. So all of those things are true. And you can do quite a bit. You can add a lot of aero. Up to a certain size. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you how much, but I bet you they know exactly how much aero they can have.
You would certainly believe that, wouldn't you? Yeah. And I like that. That's putting it understandably for people who aren't particularly techie to understand what your regulations are. If you can't drive it legally to go get a cone.
Yep. Now you can modify. I mean, it can look hilarious.
Yeah.
But as long as it's got all the interior pieces that it's supposed to have it and the like.
Well, dune buggies, they're legal, so
right.
it can be creative.
This is Mike Omick, who almost was able to dethrone Dewey DeWitt last year, who won at GRIDLIFE Midwest Festival. I hear Dewey is on his way, so we should see him at some point this weekend. But Mike Omick in that STI, another longtime GRIDLIFE competitor with the Turn-In Concepts crew. And he'll be going for gold again this weekend to get back in the Podium Sprint and see if this year he can take Dewey off the top step.
Well, and he in the combined practice sessions, Amick was 9/10 quicker than anybody else. So
wow.
He is truly well motivated right now to do exactly that. He turned a blisteringly quick 1 minute 32.349 in that Impreza, and that's fast. Second quick was the 6:06 of Alan Patton in his GR Supra to 33.3, and then Cal Fortner in his Mercedes AMG GTS at a 33.4. So, it was a big gap first to second, but then behind that, it's really snug once again.
Jamie Santos is watching, says legally LOL.
Yeah.
About driving to the ice cream shop. I suppose, yeah, it's probably challenging.
There's a wink and a nudge in there, but yeah.
And onto the front straightaway, Omick in Street Mod. We'll see what he's got. And
boy, he is pumping some juice through that turbo, isn't he?
134.115. Where does that stack up so far?
It was a 32.3 was his best. So for a first lap, I think that's pretty darn solid.
I would say so. And a couple others across. Alan Patton, 133.995.
That was that's only that's only half a second before Patton off of his best combined time.
And Andy Vogel and Ido Waxman coming across the stripe. Waxman was the winner here last year, and it was pretty wild, his lap. There he is in that silver C6 Corvette, Greg. He was one of the drivers that had a perfect score in the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship last season, 104 points. Every round he went to, he broke a record and won his category. Now, it's not silver everywhere because he had an incident at Virginia International Raceway earlier this year, put the car off in the tires. He was pretty embarrassed by it, but you have to take the car over the limit to really understand the edge, and he has found it a couple of times here at Gingerman Raceway, but he will be a threat. So will Andy Vogel in that C8 Corvette.
Well, that lap by Vogel was 1.2 seconds faster than he went in any of the practice sessions. So they've dialed something up. Now, you expect that a little bit, obviously, because you're going to take it to the next level when you're out qualifying as opposed to practice. But a gap like that tells you that something probably wasn't quite right in the setup of the car, because I don't think the track we haven't seen other people go a second and a half faster than they did in practice. So Vogel, they've got that car dialed up a bit.
Yeah, they certainly do. We got Hendricks in the 364. I believe that is a Corvette. And then here's Waxman again heading down towards 11. And this car, again, with true to street GT rules, no non-OEM aero. So this car is very slick, slippery in a straight line, Greg, but it does not have a lot of downforce to go with. We'll see if he can improve and go to the top. And the 35.6, not quick enough to go quicker than Vogel. He's got some work to do to catch that C8 Corvette.
Yeah, he sure does. I mean, right now he is, about a second and a half off at this stage, so he's going to have to dial that up just a little bit. Hendricks right now is a good 2 seconds off of where he practiced. So some of these guys, there's got to be more to come out there. But Vogel, man, he was just absolutely laying it down on that lap.
And then Keenan Prusank in a Camaro up to 4th place in the 187. Kevin Horn, another one of our Camaro entrants, P6 at the moment. And it's about a 1/10 of a second between out and in as far as the Podium Sprint is concerned. You can change the class, you can change the cars, but the gaps remain less than a 1/10 of a second.
We have I can't wait. I think it runs in either the track mod or the unlimited class. It's like a 68 Camaro.
Yeah, that'll be unlimited.
That is looks like one wicked hot rod. Can't wait to see that come out. So, that's the cool thing is whatever you like in terms of watching, whatever you like in terms of driving, there's a spot in GRIDLIFE's NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship for you to come out. And, one of the things that this shows is, a street or a street GT or a street mod car, they're plenty quick. They're getting after it for sure.
Yeah, and that Dussault car you mentioned, that's actually a Pikes Peak Hill Climb car. He spent a lot of time running it, not at the Pikes Peak Hill Climb with us as of late, but again, it is a pretty wild car. It'll do over 200 at Road America on the straightaways. Here comes Waxman again, and this time will not take a chunk out of the time, so he'll stay P2. Cal Fortner's just ahead of him, and looks like Ito is going to back it down as well. There's Fortner, who's part of the street mod category, and he'll be chasing Mike Amick all weekend long. Another one of those drivers that has been in the Podium Sprint a number of times, and we'll see if he can be on the top step. Right now, P4, as we see the graphics switch over. Patton, McHugh, Amick, Fortner, and Van Oersdahl.
And Fortner running, that's a very different graphics.
It is, yeah, new wrap on it this year.
Looks sharp.
Al's Auto Body, located in Indiana, and they've done work on my car. Excellent work, by the way. They're a great family to have them. They're always smiling, and always great to have them around. And Cal has put on a heck of a show.
Oh, yeah.
Got some rub blocks on that thing. It'll throw sparks up in the air, and he pushes for sure. And looking down the list, Devin Hoffman is joining us again in her Subaru, the 145 car in 9th. Rebecca Cohen joining us back again. Good to have Rebecca here. She was looking for a ticket as of last week, and whoops, that's Devin Herndon in the 21 that's got some smoke out of that GLA for AMG.
Yeah, I have to see what the issue is there.
Yeah, so that is not the way that Herndon's going to want to end this session. That whatever was smoking has stopped, but that's kind of in a bad spot. So again, we might see another. Imagine if we didn't have that full course yellow procedure, Greg, how many times we would have had the black flag. There's 127 time attack cars here this weekend.
Yeah.
They're statistically, you're going to have mechanical failures with how many cars you're putting on the racetrack. And this new procedure is allowing us to continue. Otherwise, we would have not been able to. So great work by John Raymond, Adam Jabay, all the people that, Abe Schmucker, all the people that conspired to create this new rule. Again, we haven't seen it deployed just yet, but I anticipate we will.
Yes, and what I love about it is they're, and it was very, very well explained in all of the drivers' briefings and the like, is that we're going to put out a safety vehicle, and as you said, there is no impetus. These guys aren't racing door to door here, so there's no impetus really to close up and try and take advantage of it. As a matter of fact, you might even want to drop back a little bit because all you want is clear track to put a lap in. And so that impetus for the door-to-door competition edge isn't there. So they say, we're going to put out a safety car. You just maintain position. We're probably going to roll a safety vehicle of some sort, a flatbed, a wrecker, whatever, out as well. Cover it with whites. Be aware of it. And we can get this and just keep it moving, and it's worked beautifully so far.
There was enough time on track, though, that they have decided to checker the session, so this will conclude the Street Mod and Street GT running for qualifying 1. Of course, they'll be on track again tomorrow for qualifying 2. But what's the difference in street mod here? About, let's see. It's a much bigger gap, a 36.5 to a 37.9 for the advancing and chasing group between Van Ordsdal and Moore. So some work to do for the 54, the 139, and of course Devin Herndon, likely a mechanical problem to sort out before tomorrow.
Well, I'll tell you, for Amick, as I said, he had a 32.3 in that late practice yesterday, and he's at a 34.1 right now, and that is all probably down to really cool air. Ooh, that was a trip too.
Yeah. What? There are bumpers out there in the sand
sure
trap?
looked like
How'd that get over there?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could probably surmise there's some drift bumpers or something, but I think the sand traps are so deep that it might be tricky to go get them.
That could
to be honest.
An issue too. Yeah.
But interesting to note that Alan Patton, Kyle McHugh, and Van Ordsdal are all GR Supras.
Yeah.
So that's a strong car for this category, at least modified how they are.
And here's the interesting thing, and this is why I think this plays to what our discussion about tomorrow morning is. Nobody right now, let me check with Van Ors at a 34.9. Yeah, nobody in that top 5 right now has gone quicker than they did in that late evening practice last night when the air was really cool. It was cloudy, the air was super cool, and obviously these cars, a lot of them turbo, and they make big power in those instances. And I think that's why we're seeing Amick off a little bit where he ran, but everybody is, which to me says tomorrow's the earlier qualifying session, that could be pretty spectacular.
It certainly could be, and of course we're going to get to follow Q3 and the Podium Sprint, which is when it's the last opportunity in Q3, right? You're going to set your fast lap in Q2, so well, maybe you didn't get the lap you needed or someone knocked you out. Q3 is the last chance to get in, and we'll be streaming that live tomorrow afternoon. Is part of our big show. Make sure that you're tuned in on YouTube to catch all of it. Up next, as far as our categories are concerned, is our Track Mod and Unlimited group. These are not always the fastest cars, but they are the loosest rule sets. And the rule sets for Unlimited in particular are basically, well, it's got to have a VIN number, and if it's past a certain pace, it's got to have a roll cage and fire equipment and all these other things. But there's not a lot that said, there's not a lot of restrictions as far as what you can build on that VIN numbered chassis. You can as long as it had a VIN number when you started, you can pull every part off of it and rebuild it to something entirely different and still be in the rules.
And the only class here that would allow you to run something without a VIN number would be that Super Unlimited. Right?
Correct. Yeah, so Super Unlimited is basically you showed up with an IndyCar prototype or something that is not at all a production vehicle. That's really the catch-all for that. Unlimited is still production vehicles, but the rule sets are fairly loose. Now, Track Mod, it's fairly close to Unlimited, but you still have to retain a dashboard of some kind, which Unlimited you don't. And there's a tire treadwear limitation. I believe it's 100 treadwear in Track Mod versus you can run slicks or whatever you want, unobtainium tires in Unlimited and beyond. So those are the basics of that rule set. Now, Track Mod actually has 2 different routes as well, which is a difference from the past. It's not a new rule for 2024, but it used to be called Track Mod for Track Modified. Mm-hmm. It's now called Track Modern, but the old saying still works. The rule set gives you 2 choices. You can either go with a supercar style car and not really do a lot to it. You can't really modify a ton. Or you can basically create the ultimate track day vehicle and modify the heck out of it, but you can't start with a supercar. So you get cars like Jason Kanakri's 720S McLaren, and you can get cars like Bronson McNeamer's LS swap Miata. So those are the 2 extremes of that. But a lot of cars fall somewhere in between.
Yeah, and they put on one heck of a show here. And that Camaro you were talking about that started life as a Pikes Peak car, you're going back there for your second straight year.
I am very excited to go back to the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. Yeah, this will be the second year. Yeah, and the often challenged, never conquered is the line for this year, and I think that's fascinating because every year, you can never really truly conquer the mountain, but every year it provides a different challenge. And my first opportunity was last year to go up there on that mountainside, and it shares a lot of similarities with the GRIDLIFE event. The dedication of the fans, it feels grassroots in many ways. It's a very cool event, so very excited to be back at the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb in a couple of weeks.
There you had a nice shot too of that stage that's going to come to life here in maybe an hour. Things are going to fire off over there pretty quick here, but Yeah, that's an event I've always wanted to experience in some, probably not driving, because that looks terrifying.
Yeah,
But
from a broadcast perspective, it's kind of fascinating because, it's like, well, could you just run fiber up the hill? No, because the only way up or down is the road that the racers are driving on, and they're using every inch of it. So you can't run a fiber line. It's all, RF equipment all the way up to the top. You don't have line of sight. It's got more corners than the Nürburgring, and you're going up 6,000 feet up to the 14,115 summit. So there's a lot of challenges with bringing that. It is a really unique event in that instance. So very excited for that.
Imagine it before they paved that last part to the top, and they were running up there when the Unsers and that group were tearing up the mountain there.
Yeah, it would have been fascinating to see it in that form, but even with the pavement, it's sped everything up.
Yeah.
So it's actually, in some ways the barrier of entry is even higher because their grip is so much higher as well. But
what have they cracked that magic? What was the number they've been trying to crack for so many years now? Is it 10 minutes or something or something like that?
We've gone under 10 for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a variety of different classes, just like the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship. There's different car categories, and there's a lot of manufacturers bringing out some big things. Hyundai, one of our sponsors, is bringing out some stuff as well with a familiar name you might have heard of. Robin Schut is going to be driving one of those, so that's all very exciting news. Track Mod and Unlimited headed out on the racetrack here, Greg, and there's Mike Dussault in that Camaro that you pointed out. This is not the track for it.
Yeah, no. It, basically that, is a late 1960s Trans Am car that's been just modified like mad with a huge arrow and the like. So it's just fun to see it. And even though it may not necessarily be it was the fastest Unlimited car in practice at a 33.3. So not a bad lap.
Not a bad lap at all. Chris Boersma, that red and white Honda Civic, is a driver that is going for the championship this season. We recently sat down with him and had an interview for the GRIDLIFE blog, so grid.life/news. You can read all about the conversation I had with Chris about his start in motorsports, kind of where he came from. Started as a drag racer and built his Honda Civic. And that car that he's driving here today, he took his wife to prom in it, and it has been along with him for his entire motorsports journey. So please go to grid.life/news and read all about the interview I had with Chris Boersma. Here is Jackie Ding in his BMW M2 that he has taken to the top of the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship. This car is so fast.
Yeah, he had a 33 flat, was his best time in practice. And he is just an absolute stud in this NOS Energy Track Battle competition format here. Really, look at that, just gassing it. So much juice coming through that car. And what I love is that, a BMW M2, normally you wouldn't think of that, being able to run with McLaren 720s and super modified, super hyped up cars. But that's the great nature of this is, you could do magical things under the hoods of these babies.
Yeah, his other car he's driving this weekend is about 175 horsepower A86.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Completely different car. But Jackie is modifying this car with his PhD Performance crew and extracting the performance they can out of this chassis. 2 second places so far in the 2 rounds that he has run, one at Carolina Motorsports Park and one at the Rev Up here a couple of weeks ago. At Carolina Motorsports Park, he was second to Justin Peachy, who was not here. And actually at the Rev Up, he was second to Jason Kanakry, who is here in the McLaren. So
there he is.
Yes. So Jason Kanakry and Jackie Ding will be going at it. How about M2 versus 720S? That's not a matchup you'd expect.
No, that's what I was saying. That's just crazy what they're able to do here. But again, it's, that rule book, whatever you want, pretty much open.
Sounds great too, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Just incredible.
There's Dussault in the Unlimited car just behind as well. So lap time's going on the board now. There's Kanakry. Dussault's tucked in. So Ding, Hodge, Kanakry, first, second, and third. Hodge is in the blue Supra that was right there ahead of Mike Dussault. And David Bamforth is third in the standings. He's that 404 car we've got in 5th right now. And he has run CMP and the Rev Up and was 7th at Carolina, 5th at the Rev Up a few weeks ago.
I tell you, Jackie on his first flyer is within 0.3 of where he had his best practice time. So he's doing a nice job, as is Hodge. He was at a 33. Well, I'll tell you, the margin between those two was 9 1/1000ths of a second at the end of those practices yesterday, and they're staying really close. And for Mike Dussault, folks, one of the things, although this car might not be perfectly suited to this track, it really, if you haven't seen what an unlimited, what you can do, just look at the arrow on the front back, the size of that front splitter that is effectively a wing in itself, the size of that rear wing, the massive extractor diffuser on the back, just all to make massive amounts of downforce and grip in these cars.
And Brenton Hodge makes some pretty good power too, but I don't think it's going to be any match here for the unlimited car, Mike Dussault, although I don't think Mike's going to go for an overtake here. And it tells you that Hodge's car is no slouch either on the straightaway, is it?
Done in a straight line.
Let's see, Hodge improves, 33.0.
Takes over that, and that's his fastest lap so far of the event.
And Kanakari, 32.9. So the McLaren 720S to the top of the board.
That's the fastest lap anybody's turned in NOS Energy here so far this event here. Again, it was all night practice. There was 2 practices last night and then 1 this morning. But still, that's a nice message delivered there.
Yep. And the car that just disappeared behind the hedge there is the 33 of Chris Boersma. Now, in the interview that I talked to him about, he was talking about the direction that they had taken this car. They had leaned into the aerodynamics for a while, and they said, we're not extracting engineer with you at every racetrack.
Yeah.
So, you can't extract it unless you have that. So they're going to back down the aero this season. They're going to focus on handling the mechanical performance of the car. So way less aero on the front of this car this season. The splitter much smaller than in the past, in hopes that they can better extract speed out of this car at the tracks that they're going to without having to dive into all the physics of dampers and things, because every racetrack is different, and that's what makes professional motorsports, when you've got all those engineers that are looking at data,
exactly.
That's what that's all for.
Right, yeah, and that's huge cost.
Yes.
And so, just personnel costs, having to understand all that. But you can throw a ton of aero at a car, but when you're running this sort of format, you're going to come to tracks where you're going to have some slower corners. If you don't have basic mechanical grip, it doesn't matter how much aero you have. You're never going to really be as good as you could be. It starts with mechanical grip, the tires, the suspension, and how it works to the track. Then you build on that. So I think that's a really good idea.
And when he started in drag racing, he said, I did it all wrong. I added power. I didn't think anything about brakes or suspension or anything. And it was awful on a road course, and it took him a long time to really go back to the basics and start with the grip and things of the sort. This car also was damaged at Carolina Motorsports Park in a big way. The whole front end effectively torn and pushed under the car. So they effectively tube framed really from the front axle forward to get all that bodywork to stick on the front of it. They did a nice job, but a lot of repairs in the last month after Carolina Motorsports Park.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things about this sport is incidents happen. It's a mechanical car. Drivers are humans. They'll make the odd mistake. You never know what can happen, and you just got to be willing to bounce back from it here. And Kanakari quickest right now in this track mod category at a 32.9. Dussault in that Camaro has turned to 31.6.
Wow, that's quick. So the overall track record here is, I believe, a 23.775 that was set in 2018 by Will.I. Young. That record is going to stand for a while, I presume. It was an all-wheel drive 1,200 horsepower Evo. It's going to be very challenging, even for this car, to break it. But, let's not say never. We'll see. And Dallas Reed in the Team V2 P1 car in second for the moment, the 22 car. David Calzada in the MX-5 is running third. Then Andres Bertulis in that Lexus RCF running P4. Ooh, that's a nice sounding car. That's that Dodge Viper.
Yes. Well, that V10 at full song, man, that has just always had a really nice howl to it. No question about that. We have a guy who still does, drives a very fast Corvette, doing time attack, track battle type stuff. He's been doing sort of the global tour. He's here, but just drifting for fun this weekend.
That would be Ferris Cartooney. Last year, he was setting records, at least in the rear-wheel drive category, at Gingerman Raceway. But this year, you know, he's brought a Corvette drift car. And I talked to him earlier the weekend. He said, I'm just going to have fun. I didn't even bring a toolbox. You know, whatever happens, happens. And seeing a relaxed Ferris car to me is great because, you know, the pressure is on in time attack. He brings that car everywhere to perform at a very high level. He's got cars that are shipped overseas everywhere right now, competing in Japan and Australia, and it just wears on you you know, how much effort you have to put in just for a lap.
Yeah,
and to go out on track, slide around, and just make a big show for the fans. That's awesome. I'm glad he's doing that this weekend.
Well, you know, I think, you know, there's, for people like Ferris, there's two different kinds of joy with the car, right? One is the joy of competing at that ultra high level, but that is a joy that also has a lot of stress to it. And every once in a while, you just need to sort of rediscover your just love for driving a car and just getting out there and pitching it and giving it a go. And he does that to great effect.
This is Sean Bassett out here in this great-looking Datsun, having a blast. And as far as his participation, he ran with us at Carolina Motorsports Park and finished 6th in class. So I think he'd like to add to the points. Datsun 240 that he's got working his way around, and one of our partners from Toyo that's joined us. A little tail waggle there out of the third corner, but making his way around. I believe the engine in this is fairly close to stock, and everything else is built up around it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's impressive.
So it's definitely a corner car.
Yeah.
But this is a racetrack. Again, it has some digs, but it doesn't have a lot of straight. It has a lot of long corners. So if you can get it up to speed to utilize the aero that's on it, it's going to go quick.
Well, and the whole thing is when you're driving a car that isn't super, you know, 1,000 horsepower type stuff, but it's light, is if you can come out of a turn significantly quicker, which means you roll more mid-corner speed, if you can come out of that corner with a much higher speed, you're going to get to terminal velocity sooner than somebody else, and that can make a difference. You know, now if you have if you're at Road America, ultimately that massive horsepower is going to overpower that. But on a track like this with these long turns, if it handles well and scoots, and you know those 240s, that's a fairly short wheelbase, so it's going to get through some of these corners really well.
And he's going to head back to pit lane. Checkered flag is out. And the last drivers that would like to complete their times may, but no new laps will be started now. So this will conclude the NOS Energy TrackBattle Championship qualifying 1. And there's 2 more of these sessions tomorrow. Q2 will not be live broadcast, but Q3 will be. And that's when we do the knockout of everybody else that's outside the top 5. And when that happens, the top 5 of each category, which is going to be effectively 35 cars, they will advance to the Podium Sprint. And it's game on. 2 laps per driver. Show us what you got. Lay down your time. That's the one that goes in the scoring book for the weekend. And that's what will give you your points.
And yeah, the one thing is if you make it to the Podium Sprint, whatever happens in the Podium Sprint, the worst you're going to finish is 5th. You know, so that's important in its own right. But 5th don't pay like 1st does when it comes to points and trophies and all of that. So, you know, that's obviously the motivation. But we get to see all the cars that make it, their full runs, and it is just superb.
Yeah, so the qualifying period is over for today. There's still some on-track action here this evening for Drift and some other series, but tomorrow we're going to go racing again with GRIDLIFE Touring Cup race number 2. That will be live to air here on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, and of course the afternoon show starting at 1:15. Lots to cover. It's going to be a very busy day. If you're not here at GRIDLIFE Midwest just yet and you would like to come, tickets, gridlifemidwest.com. You can get them at the gate. We're expecting maybe a little bit of weather tomorrow, but the temperature is absolutely perfect, so do not short yourself. Come out here to GRIDLIFE Midwest and join us, Greg.
It is a festival. Come enjoy that experience because this one, like we said, is the granddaddy, and it just goes from strength to strength. If you come out, I promise you, you won't be disappointed.
Well, that will conclude the Friday coverage here from the 11th Annual GRIDLIFE Midwest Festival. Thanks for joining us here. Kyle Heyer with Greg Kramer. Tomorrow, the resumption of the festival racing culture. We'll see you there tomorrow on Saturday with GRIDLIFE Touring Cup race number 2.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has won the Daytona 500. You spend thousands of hours on the road.
Can he do it again?
Feel hundreds of horses under the hood.
Ricky
But every race, lap, and victory you get starts at zero. New NOS Zero Sugar. Zero sugar, 100% NOS, get after it.
The Falcon Azenas RT660 is the enthusiast choice for ultra-high performance. Engineered for predictable handling and stability, the RT660 provides maximum traction both on and off the track. Your competitive edge has arrived with the Falcon Azenas RT660.